Welcome to episode 16 of Platform. Can't believe we're at 16 episodes already. Today, we're going to be speaking to Leon Humphreys. Leon is arguably one of the most prolific skaters in UK history. He has got so many full-length street parts, it is just unbelievable. And last year, he released what I would probably describe as his best section to date. That was Devotion. It was filmed and edited by John Lee. He then followed that up with a Pro Wheel promo for Go Project Wheels, which was also filmed and edited by John Lee. And he's just released a new VOD section called Holding Weight that was edited by Scott Blackmore. So loads to talk about there. Leon's also one of the first British skaters to have a pro skate. He had one around the same time as Ty Brissett, and I think Chaz Sands was just a little bit later with Salomon. And to date, there's only been a handful of British skaters that have had pro skates. So among them, Ollie Shaw and people like Sam Crofts in recent years. So he belongs to quite an exclusive elite group in that sense. Leon's one of these guys that just doesn't really seem to age. Like, if anything, he's got more productive in the last 5 years than he has been throughout any other time in his kind of quote unquote blading career. So just want to talk to him about all the stuff he's worked on recently, talk about Devotion, talk about Holding Weight, find out what the hell happened with his pro skate from Razors that had the wrong name on it. He also skated for Valo and SSM, so briefly touch on that. Find out what his plans for the future are, and yeah, just generally catch up. Before we do that though, cue the music. How you doing? You're looking well.
Yeah, have I got the lighting right?
Man, I've just noticed that for some reason it's very bright, and my poor bald head, looks like it's glowing under this because there's a lamp right above me in the dining room. So yeah.
Yeah, you look like you've got a constantly great idea.
Yeah, well, that could be true. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm cool, man. I've been freezing my gonads off today, I've got to say.
Well, you would stupidly decide to go out skating a couple of days after Christmas in the UK of all places. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely taken a bit of a wintry turn, and I thought I'd just get about it today and go for a skate. Otherwise, it has been just that festive kind of hangover, I guess, of just like eating just a shitload of food that is just indulgent, sweets and the like, and a bit of quiet family time, and everybody's kind of nestling away at home as they should be at the moment. And that's kind of the vibe. Just get out, I suppose, if you can, for a bit.
Where are you at the minute? Are you in the Blade House currently, or are you still? Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I've kind of been here for what feels like quite a long time, but probably has actually been the last 7 years. But yeah, I'm here at the Blade House in Southwest London. And
so you didn't go home for Christmas or anything like that? No.
Well, this is home, actually. Yeah. So
yeah, like as in, yeah, you know what I mean, as in like to the parentals.
Yeah, specifically this area of London is home for me. So my parents are actually they're only about 10 minutes away. I can actually get back and see them very easily, and I've really made it my responsibility to be there often and not be too far away from them, really. So along with like some of my housemates or people in London who are part of the wider group, they've had to go home and do that sort of migration back to wherever their parents are from. Mm-hmm. I have that kind of locality. I'm here in my home in Southwest London.
Who else is living in the house with you at the moment?
So I've got 3 housemates at the moment. Giogo Attadini, who he's one of those chaps who's a skater. Some people may know him, some people may not know him.
Right.
He's a Brazilian fella who moved to the UK many years ago, sort of 12 years ago, I think. And I've just, we've just been close for many years. And, he moved in about 2 years ago now, I think. Then Ross, who's the only kind of non skater, and he's a chap who I played football with and knew through some other mutual friends. So he lives here. He has actually come on a couple of skate holidays.
Right.
Yeah, he's
to be fair, some skate holidays don't involve a lot of skating, so
no, well, you can guess which ones that you come to. Winter Clash being one of them,
yeah, that's basically
and
just
then
a piss up. So yeah.
yeah, but to be fair, I mean, he's the kind of guy who has got a bit of an eye of like what kind of subculture is this, and he'll sort of try and absorb it and really like observe it. And he's not really a big pisshead either. So by the end of the evenings, you could really see like that worn face, like just trying to make sense.
This is a lot to take in. Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah, because it's just like when we're at home, obviously he's really exposed to the amount of like skating stuff that's happening, and very privy to all of the trips that we were able to go on. But then I think it was another sort of sense of things, seeing like some of his housemates just like embroiled in that kind of intensity. Like when I'm at Winter Clash, I'm kind of like divided up like 1,000 ways. Just sort of between skating and just catching up with people and that. So definitely an eye-opener for him, just in terms of like not really knowing much about skating before moving in. And then since he's got like a girlfriend at the moment who he's been with for some time, who's also like a quad skater. She's a roller derby skater. So that I think all things skating just gravitational went towards him since he moved in here.
They're everywhere at the
And
minute. Like we have a Thursday night session at Unit 23, and the weather's crap, and there's probably just as many girls on quads as there are guys on skates. And they all just
yeah.
group together because you've got that kind of like almost shared things. It's like, well, stuff's stuck to your feet and it's stuck to ours. And sometimes they'll outnumber us quite heavily, and I'm like, man, you guys are keeping this place open.
Well, there's some parallels there. I mean, before I sort of, comment on that, because it's actually quite a lot to say about how healthy rolling activity has been in London. But I should say my final housemate is Ben Walker, who's like, a seasoned veteran skater who, I grew up with in Southwest London, and have basically lived with here in the skate house since day one. And, you'd recognize him from some of the things that I might work on,
Yeah,
the
the
bank
name sounds
Instagram and
familiar. Yeah.
website and all of that stuff. But yeah, man, for sure, like huge kind of burgeoning scene of like wheeled like activity going on in London, for sure. I mean, and that's evidenced by the amount of participation that on the Thursday night roller only now session. We never had a roller only, and Blake and the guys at Bay 66 have negotiated this kind of roller only night on Thursday nights. And that's been correspondent to how many people wanted to come down and practice inline or quad and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, it's
Well,
definitely
it'll
the
be
sort
easier
of,
to campaign for now because they'll be like, look, we've actually got
yeah,
numbers
it's a
as opposed
business
to like the
plan.
last as opposed
Yeah.
to the last 6 years, and they'll be like, you guys do actually have a lot of people coming to this.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't, I mean, it is by virtue of numbers. It really is
Yeah.
a numbers kind of business decision, as much as it is like a kind of responsibility kind of thing. And, also being sensitive to the culture and the changes that ebb and flow within, our culture as a wider thing. It's definitely a good thing. And, Blake and the guys at the skate park, finally just reflecting that a little bit. And it makes for a pretty diverse, inclusive, all of the things that, you would want kind of our culture to kind of lean into. It definitely feels like that on that Thursday evening. And it's nice. It's genuinely like honestly just nice. It's a nice thing. It creates for a nice environment. And yeah, people who are learning, and there's that richness about some of the sessions when you see people learning, and there's a younger kind of uptake as well, and obviously like a more kind of, you know, gender inclusive, if you will, kind of thing, you know, young girls, older women, you know, quads, guys, girls, young, old, you know, it's really cool. I couldn't be more pleased with how things are, you know, sort of coming out of like the skate park session on the Thursday night. It's wicked, you know.
Yeah, going to a skate park and actually having a presence of estrogen for once is quite surprising as well, because normally it's just all
Just been doing that sausage
silly,
fest for
silly
2
little
decades,
silly
isn't it?
little boys of various generations. Yeah,
Well, we've grown up with just quite a lot of male centric, you know, kind of energy. You know, we did formative years up through our 20s, you know, with really just each other's kind of energy, fumbling through, figuring out things, and
that's what I mean. I think maybe if there were more women involved in the sport, it might have progressed in certain aspects a little bit quicker in terms of, I don't know, being a little bit more tolerant and
it's
growing up faster, let's say,
yeah,
because
you
it's
gotta
only
say
been in
that.
recent years where there's been developments where you're like, well, that was a long time coming, and you know, so yeah, just certain language that people use or certain attitudes that people have. Yeah,
I suppose there's something to be said about like the whole confusion and angst and kind of early energy expenditure that went hand in hand with the sort of improving yourself and kind of sort of ego blading, for no use of a better term, just sort of watching what the yardsticks were and kind of just chucking it, and you know, for no use of a better outlet of energy. You know, it was certainly for me one of those sorts of things where you know, where there were holes in my life that I couldn't quite mend, and that was definitely being like more fluid socially and being more like forward in potentially intimate scenarios with the opposite sex or whatever, and appearing interesting. I could kind of just like not bother with the whole awkwardness of that and just be like, right, fucking, I'm gonna just hurl some shit and show people how badass I am, you know, or whatever.
I think that's every like young man's problem, trying to appear interesting to the opposite sex. I think that's
Yeah,
something that probably doesn't go away with age. I think that's why we're probably grateful when we settle down. We're like, like we don't
well,
have to,
yeah,
we
it's
don't
just
have to
like,
try so hard anymore. This is great.
well, yeah, it's like, can somebody please touch me? You know, you just, and I think a lot of guys, you know, young men were definitely embroiled in that kind of tension and aggravation, and you know, and maybe yeah, a sort of more greater uptake of women and girls earlier and in that stage would have stunted that, or you know, who knows, but it's really in a pretty cool place actually. You know, I saw you said estrogen, and I was just thinking of Michelle Styling,
That's weird because as
who,
soon as I used that word, that was the first thing that popped into my head as well. So I was like, oh,
well, she's a smart woman. I mean, she's definitely you know, got that whole kind of energy of her skating in you know, it's at the tip of your tongue really. And I've seen her doing like top sole and stuff the other day or whatever with the new, you know, the way that the blocks are configured on her skates, and
yeah,
it was like, well, that's pretty fucking cool. And you know, as I was talking about my my housemate's partner, I mean, she's like a roller derby skater, but then her knowledge of some of the quad skaters, like she knows who Michelle is, for instance, and was familiar with you know, just her whole position with things, and you know, Moxie and everything else like that. And now she's gonna be seeing just on her own it like channels like grinds, you know, and soles and top soles and stuff. So you know, there's a bit of a net all sort of closing in there, so to speak. It's pretty cool.
yeah. I saw that video that Joe put up. I think I only watched it today, and they were basically calling out tricks for her to do, like do a kind grind. She does a kind grind on the quads and do a fish spray and do a sole and top sole. And I was like, holy shit. Because yeah, first off, I'd never seen her skate before, and I was like, whoa, you can pretty much just do whatever anyone like shouts out, which I knew she was a big deal in quad skating, but I didn't. You just don't really think about someone's skill level, I guess, until you see it or like
Yeah, I
witness
mean,
it.
it's that. Yeah, she's obviously like really, really comfortable on
Yeah,
skates.
like she
Like,
just Yeah, she's one of those people that is like visually pleasing to watch on skate. She looks like it's the most natural thing in the world to her.
Yeah,
But the thing I was confused
just
about is what's the deal with that house? Do you know, like, because apparently her and Miguel live there, but it looks like a
I
dreamland. How the hell did they get that place?
well, I honestly, I actually didn't see that video that you had mentioned.
Ah,
I
right.
think I saw a separate clip on social media. Obviously, it would have been of her doing that soul to top song, and the way she just sort of slid the foot under, like, whoa, okay, somebody's been like watching tape,
She does it the same
But
way that skaters do, though. She like puts
yeah,
the
she
sole foot
slid it.
behind her. Yeah,
Yeah, she slid it under. Like she didn't sort of step over, which is
yeah.
kind of like an old school kind of sticky way of doing it. She sort of slid it under, and I was like, huh. I mean, obviously, like our partner's Miguel, so he's an authority on,
They're in a
you know.
relationship. Didn't realize that. I thought they were just like friends or something.
Oh, well, I hope I'm not spilling the beans there, but I thought that was pretty well known. No,
I mean, I don't know.
but even either way, they're very close, and
Right.
and clearly there's like an osmosis of skills going on there, quite clearly going on there. But yeah, she's fucking sick. I really enjoyed like her podcast or whatever from a few months ago. I think she did a jump street. It was pretty cool. She's
I haven't
badass.
watched that one yet. Yeah, yeah. The house looks
It's
wild. It
really
looks,
good.
it looks like a house in the mountains, and then they've got it goes out. There's a platform out the kitchen or something, and it just goes straight onto the platform of the vert ramp, and it is like a legit vert ramp. Then there's
Wow.
two trampolines, like Olympic style trampolines, and then a mini ramp.
Well, it sort of sounds like a kind of it sort of sounds like an offshoot of like Woodward kind of thing. I mean, they've both had, or at least Miguel has had extensive
Yeah,
time
yeah.
where you've had living quarters close to like elite, um, you know, uh, like training ground kind of thing. Vert, street course, stuff like that. I actually don't even have a clue. Sounds like a bit of a dream for me when I hear stuff of like background, like backyard skate setups. I think like, fuck, man, I just get so broke. I'd just be broken off like the whole time. Like
That is my
I
concern. Like,
can't.
yeah, you'd go out there on your own and get hurt, and you'd be like, there's no one to like lift me back into the
Yeah, you're
house.
just at the bottom of the ramp, just like, oh shit, my phone's in the kitchen.
I did not think this through. You need like a panic button on the ramp or something just in case. Yeah.
You need
Um,
like a cord or something, some sort of
yeah.
alert device. But it definitely it sounds like everybody's dream. I mean, from who is it? Matt King, one of the London skaters, one of the OG London skaters. He had a
Right?
spine ramp in his garden, and then
Yeah. And then that thing in
do
his
you know who
basement
Matt
as
King
well.
is?
Oh man, everyone
He
knows
and
who Matt King is. Come on now.
Sure, I don't know why I asked you. Yeah, but you go back so far, and I
Yeah.
know that you go back as far, but you just sort of have to check that people know what the fuck you're on about sometimes. But he has had a few setups at home. Like he's always had some kind of like home skate park. He had some grind boxes at his a few years ago that people were going in
Yeah, I remember
and
seeing
kind
the
of.
like Friday night videos or whatever it was. He used to like live stream it or something like that.
Yeah, there was a lot of like Facebook live streaming at
Yeah.
that point, and I think that was just prior to, I suppose, the explosion of Instagram and any kind of streaming sort of capability of Instagram. And it's weird that you can kind of look back at eras of sort of social media
It
kind
is
of
bizarre.
output.
Yeah. You're like, remember MySpace? And like most people you talk to are like, no, I never had that because I was too young. And you're like, holy shit, I'm really
I
old.
love
Okay.
MySpace. I used to love it. I used to I used to really like the format of like, well, this is who I'm into. This is my top 8. This is my top, whatever, my top
Yeah.
10. It'd always just be like the most extreme, like doom metal bands,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I knew
Everyone had
that I
the
knew of.
little
It would just be like
jukebox on their
the
page. Yeah.
most hardcore kind of selection of artists that I knew of would be their kind of thing. But I discovered a lot of music through MySpace, so I can't complain.
It
But
was good for that. Yeah. Right. We've gone on a weird tangent here. Right. So new sections out. Holding weight. I keep wanting to call it pushing weight because every time I see the term, it reminds me of the Freddie Gibbs song, which I don't know if you've heard, but is insanely catchy. And now, just whenever I see anyone show that like graphic, that yellow graphic for your video, I'm like, the song just starts appearing in my head and drive me nuts. Where does the name come from?
um, yeah, I suppose that's a pretty you know obvious reference. I suppose it's got its kind of rap lyric kind of connectivity there. I mean, I'm definitely a guy familiar with like the kind of 90s canon of rap music, and some of the things that are inferred there are obviously like, slang terms for street jobs and stuff like that, so the sort of pushing weight, holding weight reference certainly kind of leans into that kind of idea that, just sort of in the streets and kind of got work to do. But I think like really the thing that I kind of center around, at least from this year's experience, and I think most people would sort of be resoundingly, certain about what this year's been like. It's been tough for lots of different reasons, and throughout all of that kind of difficulty, I think skating's definitely been that practice that's helped maintain that kind of balance, I suppose, in my life. And it's kind of like illuminated, or helped to illuminate a little bit, like in terms of, like how much there is to carry, and what's worth carrying, and what's not. And, I suppose in light of all of the difficulty and stress and everything, I suppose it's also been just a lot of gratefulness and a lot of sort of Jesus Christ, I'm like really lucky to have spent a big part of my life, with friends who are economically stable and safe for the most part, who are able to come out and skate and share this kind of these moments that we've had. I suppose it's highlighted or punctuated just how bright skating kind of has been for me, and how lucky we are to have this. So, the other aspects of my life that I suppose, they're mine to kind of deal with, I suppose that's where the kind of weightiness has sort of come from. And I think a lot of those things have been punctuated by what's happened this year. And I suppose on some levels just kind of like hidden all of that stuff, but it's not necessarily hidden. It's just what my life's been like. It's been like holding weight, and it just felt right to kind of synthesize all of that stuff that's been going on into that section, into that part. That might be one of the meanings of it all, I guess, for me, to have overcome some of that stuff, maybe, or just to bear it, more like to bear it,
Okay.
So I don't know if that made any sense.
Like, I'm just talking, I'm not sure what's coming out. I think that resonates. That makes sense. The thing that like instantly had me laughing, because I bought it the day it came out. I can't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, or whatever. But just as soon as I like clicked on the link, and it was like filmed on location in London and Norfolk, and I was like, that is a fucking rant. Like, London makes sense. Norfolk, I get that. I'm pretty sure Sam Curry lives there, doesn't he? Like,
he does,
but
yeah.
other than that, that still
And
doesn't
Scott.
make it. That's still. Oh, Scott lives there as well.
Scott lives in Norwich, yeah.
Right, so he's not in Bournemouth. Was it Bournemouth he used to live in before, or Dorset?
Yeah, Scott was in Bournemouth.
Right.
That's where he's from. And I kind of had met Scott and become closer to Scott via one of my previous housemates, which was Mike Simpson.
Right.
So just through that relationship, meeting Scott, becoming more aware of the guys that formed DRC at that time, and becoming a fan of all of that work, and wanting to kind of I just suppose maybe work on some bits and pieces here and there, mostly with Mike, while he was.
You made something with DRC before, didn't you? Didn't you make like an edit that didn't have any music? It was just skate sounds.
Yeah, good shout. So when Mike Simpson was living here in London, so I had accrued, quite a lot of footage that does tend to be, what most years kind of go by like. I'll pretty much set about filming for various different things. I'm never really too sure what's going to come out of it year to year, but that year I just had like a lot of clips that I was sort of wondering what to do with. I'm not the best guy in the world at editing. I'm still, you know, there's still a lot for me to learn there, and I do a lot of skating too, and there are a lot of other things that I'm basically getting on with. So if there is an opportunity for me to like work with somebody who has like really sort of interesting ideas about, you know, what skating could look like, both from, you know, their practice of skating and skating with Mike. You know, he's an interesting guy to be around and skate with, you know, to mess around with, to just be spontaneous with, and, you know, yeah, just like have a lot of fun with as well, you know, crack a lot of jokes with. So there are a lot of reasons for me to just sort of suggest to him whether he wanted to you know, work on some clips, maybe pull together an edit. It had music to start with because, you know, I would often defer and say, oh, it has to have music to it, you know, there has to be a music part of this section, because, you know, all skate sections do. But he played around with some of the sound effects and warped some of the sound and ramped some of the sound and played with some of the color and did some effects, and came out with that that section that had quite a lot of like hidden edits in there, actually, that no one really knows about. But I think when you sit in an edit suite, and we've got, at the time we had various different edit suites, we'd come up and kind of work on stuff downstairs or upstairs or whatever. And yeah, you know, I think the section's got quite a few little cryptic things that are just sort of quite personal little touches. And yeah, I like it. And it came out on DRC Vimeo because at the time I wasn't in any way established in terms of what I was doing with the stuff that I'd filmed. Like, I've never been particularly good at my own footage management, being organized administratively, you know, and just sort of, you know, being the captain of my own shit, basically, when it comes to like producing videos. So I, you know, would often look to guys who had like, you know, either qualifications or a little bit of experience, you know, in production and post-production to kind of like work on, or to partner up with. And that's why I like partnered up with Shaman for Many Revolutions, because, you know, he's got an extraordinary kind of photographic eye and conceptualization of skating. And I basically wanted him to like hold my hand a little bit, essentially, and to just sort of pick his kind of brain a little bit in that process and learn from him to an extent as well, and help him implement some of the ideas that I had. And so those are really important formative steps to me, like actually sitting and doing some editing myself and trying to like implement my vision myself. But I wasn't very confident for a while doing that. So that's why I had Simpson edit that piece. And I suppose subsequently some of my best pieces of work were sort of things that I had sort of had I'd asked people whether they were interested in doing this particular piece of work with me, you know, for the end product. And so, you know, having like a lot of footage over this year, it was it made sense to approach Scott, because there'd been this long affinity with Scott, with Mike, with Harry, with Colum, with Louis. You know, the whole crew are guys that I ended up spending time with in various different parts of the world. So, you know, I felt like we were just getting closer, and you know, it just felt right at this time, you know, to sort of synthesize this whole project together with Scott at the helm in terms of editing it, you know. So yeah, real gift, real solid he's done me there, man. I ain't gonna lie.
It turned out good. Although I'm not gonna lie, the first day I watched it, I think because I was such a big fan of Devotion, and Devotion's a lot more like in your face. Like, there's a lot of big tricks in there, especially the ender, which we're going to remind me we're circling back to that. But with Scott's, there was a lot more. It was basically just too much to take in the first watch. Like, you have to watch it. I had to end up watching it like 3 or 4 times to fully get some of it. I was like, oh, that's what makes that really hard. And I was like, oh, and then I noticed that he'd like how he'd pieced together certain parts, and I was like, oh right, that was really clever. Or like just like certain glitch effects, or like messing about with like loads of yellows throughout it and things like that. And it was just it felt like it had a totally different vibe to Devotion, obviously, because Devotion was filmed over the space of like over 2 years plus.
It's a longer period of time.
But I felt like this one like embraced your weirder side more, because there was stuff in there that we don't really see you do, like or things that were like a lot more dangerous than they initially looked. It was only when you watch back and go, oh, he could have actually probably died there, right? Okay, that right. Or
Yeah, man. I
or the
think
weird,
so.
like there's a thing that you've just developed that I've only seen you do in this section where you do like I don't even know what to describe. Like it's like a pencil air, and you do it at least twice during the section. There's one where you do it off like a kind of like,
Yeah.
I want to say it's like a fly off ledge. You just jump up and straight, and then there's one where I think you do it off. Oh, it might even be like a bin
Yeah.
or and
Yeah. Yeah.
you 180 off it, but again do the straight, and I'm like, that's new. I've not seen that.
Well,
It
the
looked like a kind of like
pencil.
it looked like a kind of like Colin Martin reference almost.
Well, yeah, I think so. Although I would stop short of saying that it's something that I'm like entirely happy to just be like, I'm doing some Colin Martin shit. Like, I'm
I
kind of
don't
not,
mean
but I'm,
that. I don't mean
I'm like
snaking
a,
a Martin. I just mean yeah.
no, no, sure, but no, you're right. I think the first one was kind of I just sort of put an end to that attempt. But I think sometimes when I'm out skating, and it's a way of either managing when something goes wrong, like I might be on a grind or I might have misplaced my feet with whatever I'm doing, and a way of almost saving myself or a way of I suppose stopping what's going wrong is almost like either putting your body quite sort of rigid or putting your body quite floppy or making your body quite rigid. And I don't quite know why. It's quite funny. It's sort of like a kind of, I don't know, like a comedic coming down from a serious attempt at something. It's either
Right.
that or it's just like something that I know looks kind of silly and it's just a bit of an impulse to do it. But then the one off the bin, I was trying to kind of just sort of hyperextend like the bottom half of my body, like,
Yeah.
you know, my legs. So they kind of reach the floor sooner than, you know, if I was just doing like a legit 180 or something like that. So there was a nod to the sort of like techniques that Colin is doing, but it is in no way, shape or form of that sort of echelon of wizardry. I mean, I only recently watched Colin's most recent, oh, well, anything he puts on is mind bending and
Yeah,
physics
it
bending,
defies. Well, I
you
think
know.
it defies gravity because I'm like you're. I'm pretty sure your feet are meant to touch the ground at that point. I don't know how you stop them from doing that, but yeah,
Yeah, it's just this like deft change of direction where there wasn't enough time to,
yeah.
and you know, it's like his body, his upper body has sort of twisted or contorted away that his legs have remained where they were, and there's an illusion quality to it as well. So that's what makes the skating really interesting. It makes you want to watch it once, twice, three times. It actually never gets tired. And I suppose what you were just saying, just in terms of, you know, Scott's like editing style, his kind of palette of skating, you know, ideas and things that he finds interesting, the layers of detail, of sound, of color, of distortion and disruption, and then, you know, sort of letting you breathe and take in some of the surroundings and the interactions, and then using the music in the best way possible to create tension and to create kind of
That is what I was going to say as well. I like
a
it.
building.
The way that he's put it together does that. It kind of leads towards like a crescendo. Yeah, pretty much where you're like, right, something's coming, and then yeah. So
Yeah, and I suppose it sort of, it almost never quite comes, and that's kind of the point. It's sort of we did really think of the optimum part leaving you wanting more. So that was definitely something that, you know, wanted to sort of pull through into the project, that it was something that kind of left you wanting more. I mean, I know that I've got like a variety of tricks, but I know I lean heavily on top soles and stuff like that. And, you know, I find some really, really good spots that lean into that kind of strong suit of mine with the top sole. So, you know, there's quite a few good ones in there that you can sort of say are the kind of the obvious bangers. But even those ones, it's kind of like the one where I cut my hand and there's that really fractious kind of interaction with the woman resident there, who, you know, I've got to say, I'm just like, I'm a total bastard for doing that, you know. And you know, and even,
I
you
was
know,
actually yeah. There's a couple of things I was going to reference that you've mentioned already, but I'll let you carry on.
yeah, no, don't get me wrong, it's not like you know, I go out sort of skating to kind of terrorize people, nor am I a saint. You know, it's not. Sometimes the kind of collateral of what's going on in that moment is something where you look back and think, you know, I haven't covered myself in glory there. And actually in that kind of housing estate, you never know if it's, well, not that you never know, it's likely to be older people resting, people with some kind of disability, just, and you know, I kind of think like that because I'm a healthcare professional in the
Yeah.
community, so I kind of know that that's kind of what's going on. By the same token, there's this like different sort of spark within me that had sort of thought about that particular spot and achieving that move. And I suppose by the time I'd gotten into the really kind of tense interaction, and then, you know, it turned reactive from that lady, you know, I basically cut my hand wide open. Like, it was really bad, like, and that was exactly what was going to happen. When you look at that spot, it's kind of not really a spot, you know, it's sort of like there is a shape there that you could get onto from there, and then you
Yeah.
could, if you wanted to, get down there, and that could be a skate move. But there are so many stumbling blocks to like that being a thing. But I kind of have made a thing in terms of my skating of doing some tricks like that, where I don't know, definitely being there and trying it in that moment just seems a bit tricky, you know, for no use of a better term. But you know, those little nails that came out of that thing, it was just so obvious I was going to just slice my hand open on one of the attempts, which is what I did. And I was bleeding profusely, the water came down, and I was like, look, man, I've only got one more, and we're going to have to go and wrap this hand up because it's a mess. So, you know, much like you know, the ender in Devotion, there was really a sort of a quite peculiar mental trigger that was playing out. You know, sometimes the pressure doesn't
And
work for you.
you were, yeah, you also ate shit pretty hard a few times on that. And most people would have, after a couple of those slams, and most people would have said, that's enough. Like, I'm done now. But yeah, that's just testament to your endurance, for want of a better word, because you're quite notorious in the UK for taking some of the worst bails. Anyone, like, if there's something to hit your face off, you'll find a way to hit your face off it. Like, like, you must have banged your face
Yeah.
up more than any other skater I know.
Actually, I don't think so. You know, like,
I mean,
I okay.
I've seen you do a straight air on a quarter pipe and manage to hit the quarter pipe with your face.
Was that in Birmingham?
I think it was, yeah,
That
and
was
that was horror story stuff, and or you managed to just clip a lamppost with your face, or like
that
you,
was see, those are the two times. And I also when
you've
I
also
was
had some bad breaks. So let's, like, you've had some bad broken bones.
I had my you know, I did my time, you know. And although that's actually a rather silly thing to say, because have I got any wood? Yeah, touch wood. You know, there's always something around the corner. So you know, I'm really well aware of that. And I've actually, like, you know, practiced falling a lot. You know, I've got you know, quite a lot of experience of having to react quickly and deal with things that, you know, like, a lot rides on my health, like everybody's does. You know, I've got a job, I've got relationships that depend on that. I mean, everybody is held, you know, by those sorts of overheads. You know, I'm not out there throwing caution to the wind. You know, there is something that's particular that's going on when I go out skating. So even with some of the things that are difficult, it's weird that I'm sort of assembling a set of experiences and my knowledge of physics, of how skate stuff, frames, boots, my body works on the terrain, and you know, trying to make as calculated decisions as possible. I mean, most of the stuff that I'm going for, it's like I've done the work upstairs to kind of work it out, really, and see,
Oh
you
yeah.
know.
At no point am I like insinuating that you're just being reckless on skates. What I'm saying is you've been quite notorious for having shockingly bad luck.
Yeah, I had like I had yeah, I actually had a pretty good year. Like I had some terrible slam earlier on in the year that I posted on the social media, which was just doing a switch up on this ledge, and it just went so badly wrong. There was just no need for it to go as
I
badly
remember
wrong
that.
as
Yeah.
that. And that was a bit of a slap round the face sort of thing, because it's just like, well, never be complacent ever. There's there's no good that can come of being complacent on skates. And I know that riding with the energy of the session, and you might be at festival, you might, oh, I just need to skate, not put the protective stuff on, or whatever. But for me, there's no room to be complacent on my skates. There's too much riding on it, and I try and concentrate on that sort of state of mind as much as it is like physically doing the stuff. Like I'm an older guy, so I've got to just be a little bit sharper across the board, really, and just, yeah, I think about that all the time, actually.
Didn't
you know
right. I'm not sure if I'm remembering this right or not, but I'm sure around about the time I want to say I was 15 or 16, and I was hanging around with Chris Doughty a little bit,
Mm.
and I remember him coming back from London or just hearing from you, and you'd broke your leg or your ankle or something, and a doctor said you weren't going to skate again, or he basically didn't think you'd be able to. And I think that was around
Yeah,
about the time you were still on, I want to say Fifth Elements.
yeah.
Yeah.
I had the Mark One Utos. Are the green ones Utos? The green ones are Utos now, are they? Are they? Are they his
You
pro
took,
skates?
oh yeah, yeah, because yours were like
Yeah.
black, they were like black and blue Fifth Elements or
Green.
something like that. Yeah,
No,
green, right,
they're
okay.
they're green. Yeah, the forest green and
Yeah.
black ones. And I was only a little bit of time into skating them. You just having the time of my life as any. I was one of a few who actually had those skates. Like I
Yeah, I
had
don't
them shipped
remember
from the States.
seeing that. Yeah, right, okay.
And so this is so what we were speaking about earlier on, and just in terms of that kind of that immature kind of angst part of the male kind of early psyche of skating, where you can go into sessions over emotional,
Yeah.
right? And I actually at the time was working at a supermarket. I was working at Waitrose, right? I haven't actually said this to many people, but it is actually a pretty relevant thing about going into sessions over emotional. But basically, I there was this girl who I liked,
Oh, here we go.
who like we worked with,
Right.
and basically like I think we were out, or there was a bunch of like work people out. I'd gone out for one of like the social evenings, and basically I hadn't like shamed myself or anything, but I was just like, I came out of it just thinking, fuck man, like I'm just, what am I supposed to do in this sort of situation? Like if I'm like into somebody, how do you even make that a thing? I was kind of distraught about it. It was like, I'm just going to be kind of a tool when it comes to talking to girls for the rest of my life. I was so down on myself, and I remember going to work like the next day and just feeling real shit, and then meeting the guys after work, and I tried to alley topsoul Paternoster Downledge, which is an iconic early London skate spot where St Paul's Cathedral is, but they've reconfigured the whole area now.
Right. But it used to have the
Um,
black square wall rails as well. Is that right? Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, like Barry Reed,
Yeah.
Sean
Remember like
Bodderton,
DNA and
Anthony
Unity and all that stuff.
Dickinson,
Yeah.
DNA stuff. Yeah, all of that, all of those guys, legend photos up there. And then there was me, not even spurned, not even like, I'm just like, I'm a loser kind of energy. And then I tried to alley topsoul this
Going
fucking,
into it with that positive mental attitude and then going,
yeah, just
going
like fuck it, I'm who was saying that to you? Was it on your podcast that somebody was really self-deprecating, and it was like an early kind of thing for them that they used, just being like, fuck you, you're an idiot, and like, fuck it, send it, this kind of thing? Was it you, or was it someone else that was holding that podcast? Anyway, doesn't
not
really
sure.
matter, but the energy was the same. It was just
Right.
like, I don't really care about what happens, as long as I come away with this alley topsail and get the glory. And I dislocated my ankle. I went on top, I span onto my ankle, landed on it, rolled over it, hurt, like felt and heard me break my bone. Was like, Jesus Christ, that's not good. Looked at it, and my fucking ankles just facing the wrong way. It was just like trip out, complete nightmare, pain, just all of that stuff. And yeah, man, that was really bad. Like, I dislocated my ankle, I broke my fibula, like I had ligament stuff, and this was in 1998. So when I was looking down, I was just like, Jesus Christ, they're gonna have to amputate.
Yeah,
Not
when you're that young, that's going to scare the shit out of you, because you're like,
Yeah, it's just
well,
like, am I this vulnerable?
my body's
Like,
not meant to look like that, so that's terrifying. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just like, I'm fucking vulnerable. I'm really vulnerable. This thing that I thought of, that was going to suffice in terms of my want to be active and expressive and aggressive and all that kind of stuff. I thought I had like a wick to burn. It was just like, oh fuck, like I can get taken out, like
Yeah.
not walking style, taken out for like life affecting injury. And it wasn't a good time. I had surgeries. I had multiple surgeries. I had 4 surgeries on my leg. Had I had the metal plate taken out. And yeah, I suppose the guys who were with me at the time, who witnessed that and who were in and around that injury and who knew me, I was on a kind of express path of like doing handrails and really getting good and all of these sorts of things happening, and that ended very, very quickly, and I was in a world of pain for a long time. So it looked like I might not walk again, but actually I was young, and they were able to really help me recover. I recovered fully. So and it probably landed me in good stead to just get that brutal but profound kind of early sort of warning that this shit is not to be taken for granted, and I should never be complacent. Although subsequent to that injury, I've had tons. So
Yeah. I was gonna say, it's one of those things that even though people all around you are regularly breaking bones, like you regularly hear of people breaking a finger or an arm or a wrist or whatever, you never, as a teenager anyway, you just don't contemplate what that would feel like until it
nah,
happens to you. And I got off really lucky for like the first decade that I skated with stuff like that. I would just get cuts and bruises. And it was only when you get older that your frail body starts like snapping once in a while.
no,
But
you were speaking about your pelvis. I mean, fucking
yeah,
hell.
that happened. That was
Jesus
like,
Christ.
that was 4 years ago. Like that was recent. Like that was the
Yeah.
year my daughter was born. And I was like, I wasn't even in pain. Like I drove home and I was like, my partner is going to kick the
Yeah,
shit
she's
out
gonna
of me.
kill you.
Like we've got a
I
newborn child and I've just went, well, I'm out for 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, the stakes when you've got like a young kid, when you've got a dependent, that's obviously like kind of a different thing. It's actually, to a lot of the guys' credits, who've got kids, and they're able to somehow manage that and come out and skate and still practice and be in that kind of danger. But it's a practice as well. It's not implicit that you're out skating and
Yeah.
you're basically, Carlos Pianoski every weekend. I think you can come out and practice, and a lot of people are getting a lot of benefit from having a more mediated practice on skates, and
Yeah. Yeah.
not actually just throwing caution to the wind and that send it kind of attitude. That is to an extent a young man's game, but I suppose in the higher elite end of practicing skating, it's still very possible that you're going to do a death drop rail, or there's going to be something that appeals to you, that people are kind of like looking at you like, are you sure? Like actually,
You've
maybe
got
not, are
this.
you
You've got this
sure?
right. Yeah.
Maybe not, are you sure? Actually, I haven't really had anybody being like, are you sure? Like that's
I
I
know. I know
think.
what you mean. But we've all had those conversations where someone's like, "This is happening today," and then you just see people like being a bit nervous or tentative, and they don't want to
Yeah.
be doubters because you don't want to put that idea in your friend's head. But you well, some people have mentioned it in the podcast before, where their friends are just like, their friends are a little bit too real with them, and they're like, "You don't have this. Don't do it. Please don't do it. Like, you're gonna fuck yourself." And then, but then you've got other friends that are like more supportive, but you can tell they're also concerned for your safety because they just go a little bit quiet, and they're like, "Okay, I'm not gonna do it to
Yeah,
rock the
that
boat here, but yeah,
that energy is something that I can definitely resonate with. I can think of various situations in the past, namely our friend Ali Brightwell, who famously 540 the big single set of stairs at London Bridge by the needle point, or rather the needle sculpture. And it was, I mean, there was a couple of people who were just sort of like egging it, but for some sort of sadomasochistic kind of vibes coming out of their camps. And then
that's
there's a
when you can
few of
spot the
us who
sickos. You can spot the sickos that like know their friend doesn't have it, but still want them to try it anyway, just
they
to
want
see what
to
happens.
see it go down. Let's
Yeah,
see what happens here. I
sickos.
mean, maybe it's the one in a million sort of, he scrapes his hand, just about bums the landing, and it's fucking glory. But it just, that we all knew that the forces involved with this were not going to, like, his body would not support that. And he fucking died. That he really like crumpled. And but it was funny because he like recovered, he was fine, it wasn't some kind of life-changing injury. And
Yeah,
actually, when I think about that, when it happened, you know we were I was certainly really like, oh god, I don't know if I can watch, because you sort of know what's going to happen. But it's a fun memory because he was fine, and I just remember the kind of the energy, the giggling. But it's like, oh my god, he's going to die. But it's kind of funny that he's going to try it. Why is he trying it? What's in his head right now? I want some of what he's having, or that kind of thing. But actually, I probably wouldn't want what he's having, because it was insanity. It's a big
yeah.
set.
There were a
I
lot
think
of
like
those
Ollie
moments.
Short had landed it before that, just about. So, you know, but yeah, man, we got to manage ourselves. Older guys out there in the front lines, skating street. We got to
Yeah,
manage it.
I wouldn't mind,
You
but all
know.
my worst injuries have always been on like the least dangerous things. So it's like you'll skate the kink drop rail and you'll come away unscathed, or with like a cut hand, and then you'll skate a P rail and have to go to A&E, and you're like, how's that fair? How is that? That's not fair.
I broke my arm skating a P rail a few years ago, and that was like the most pathetic kind of, what was the point in that? Actually, I was expecting to look down and just see like my arm in half with just like horror movie bone protrusion, like compound fracture shit. But it was just breaking a bone fucking hurts. It's so horrible, the idea of it and the reality of it. But I'm looking to keep it.
Minimize that in the future. I think that's a good thing to look to do. Yeah, to
I'm
minimize it.
keeping I'm keeping shit skeletal from here on out.
Sounds good. Right, we keep doing this thing to me where I keep having to like remember what I asked you, because you keep diverting. Right, we're going back to holding weight because
Yeah,
there's
man.
some incredibly satisfying things in there. The zero spin alley topsoul along the ledge that just felt as if you could have held that forever. I was like, that's just ridiculous. The true fish to stair bash, because true fish is pretty scary on its own. True fish, when you know you have to stair back, like you don't have a choice and stair, because the rail ends before the end of the stairs. So your balance has to be good to like get that, or you're getting wrecked down the stairs. And then the true top porn along that weird little coping thing on top of the ledge,
Yeah, yeah.
that must have been
Ah,
so insanely satisfying to do,
yeah.
because it
Oh
looked
my god.
like, I don't know, you probably had to wax it up or whatever, but it looked like you just slid clean off the end of it. Like you must, when you were like halfway along that, you were like, I've got this. Like this is,
Yeah, it was seriously one of the most satisfying things that I could say grind wise that I've done. I
yeah.
mean, if you think about what that thing looks like, it almost looks like a miniature gauge train track. Um,
Yeah, it's got that kind of like, yeah, small tracks kind of vibe thing to it. Yeah.
yeah. So, you see techniques where you've got a small little lip or a small little edge, and people are able to find some definition there, and it and holds them on. And that was a quite obvious protrusion. And I'd actually sort of earmarked that spot, for years. It's just in a place in London where you often just sort of skating past it at speed. um and who knows why on that day it was like, let's go and do that thing. But I remember just trying, was it like I did a sweat stance on it. Well, that's the first thing I did on it, and just sort of like held it, and I was like, oh my god, this thing is amazing. This is awesome.
Yeah.
This thing is amazing. I can't believe they made like a train track for grinding here. And I was thinking, what's like the most satisfying thing personally for me? And I always think about that Brian Jaggers, TTP with the hood up,
through the window, through the
window. That one's a good one. And so and that was the second attempt. The first attempt, I kind of ate shit a little bit on the first one, because I went way too fast, way too confident. Like, I'm gonna slap it in, pretend it's a mini ramp, and then just sort of like missed it, rolled over on my neck, and I was like, bastard. But then
right, more careful next time. Right, noted.
It just didn't let me off. I was able to come out forwards, let my top side foot slide through. Like, it was the most proper feeling TTP I could really wish for. It was so satisfying. That's why I come off and like I just skate off, and make it look like I'm just basically skating home after that. Just like
I'm done for the day. Bye, boys.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go home. That felt too sick, and so yeah, that was a good one. And I mean, in any section that I put out, often there's going to be some true topside stuff in there. I make a habit. And I think, often true fish is one of them ones where, a lot of people do true fish. Sometimes there's a bit of a faking of the funk that's going on there with that one. There's quite a few things to really get that all grabbed up and
I was about to say yours was like legit grabbed. That wasn't a like, oh, I'll wait till I lock on and then I'll go for my foot. Like, you went for the foot.
Definitely. I think that's the way, in your mind's eye, you'd always want a true fish to look. I think if we see some of the best ones done in the videos, Scour, Standfast, or Tatnasu, my man, like, these guys are grabbing their shit, when they're in the kitchen eating their breakfast before they go out for the session. They're grabbed up, man. So I think, like, I'm not as anal about grabbing for set tricks. Depends what trick you're doing, but I think on a true fish, for the most part, you want to be grabbing that nice and early, before you lock. And I've had enough opportunity to practice that trick. And yeah, where I'm at with things, I don't really, if I set my mind to a certain type of move, or I've gone out with an intention for that day, either with a certain spot in mind or sorts of tricks that I'm thinking of at the moment, I want to do them to the best of my ability and to that kind of standard that so you ain't gonna pick holes in the things that I'm doing, to our standards, to the standards, the established kind of standards of aggressive skating, as it were. I still adhere to that stuff a little bit, and don't really want to put stuff out there where you'd be like, but I'm not really trying to do that. So I've got to do the early grab true fish.
Yeah, there's certain elements of our self-imposed rules that we've created for ourselves, that some of them can be taken or left. Some of them it's like, oh, well, you can do a backslide without a grab. But then there's other ones where you're like, well, no, because for my own like peace of mind, I have to adhere to these, otherwise it will drive me insane. So it might not even be what the community would respond to seeing you doing it. It would how you would feel in response to you doing it. Like, you go, oh no, that didn't feel right. Just for
totally
your own peace of mind.
I just think the true fish position, it doesn't really lend itself that well to no grab. So I just think, no matter what, I think like a backslide with no grab, I've seen many that were awesome. Back talks, I've seen many really that were awesome. Front talks, I've seen many that were awesome. The grabbing sometimes is a sugar on top, sometimes it's not grab because it's more effective and functional to make the move possible. Sometimes burliness mitigates the need for the grab. Sometimes the guy is saying, enough's enough, I'm not I don't need to grab. We don't need the grab. You hear that sometimes as well, and get that sense. So there's a lot of factors that change whether somebody feels to do that or not. But for me, True Fish, and especially where that was getting filmed from as well, you want to accentuate and ram home a True Fish, nice fisheye angle. You've got the sound effects of the stairs. I wanted that clip to be like, fuck yeah, like that's a good one. I could definitely look back on that one when I'm older or whatever and be like, I had the True Fish down.
No, it
And
was it was legit. You touched on the woman throwing the bucket of water over you. I couldn't figure out whether that was an apartment block or a commercial building because it had a weird sign that I can't remember. It had like a sign
it's
that
like a star.
suggested it was a commercial building. But yeah, we've already discussed that. But there was another point in the video where you're a bit of a naughty boy, Leon.
You might have to remind me what
Jumping on some poor guy's car bonnet.
Oh shit, yeah. So
See if you were coming off a rail and it was like, oh, that came up faster than I expected.
Yeah, that whole
But
that whole sequence.
that was an intentional bonnet ride. That was.
Yeah,
I'm using this as part of my trick.
yeah, that was. So there is a little bit of a background to that, and I guess I probably do well to explain that a little bit. So I'm not seen as
There's going to be a lot of
essentially like
naughty. There's going to be a lot of
vandal.
upset car owners watching that section, going, "The fuck is he doing?"
Yeah, especially when they see like wheel marks on their car as well. They're going to know who it is. But I think just that whole sequence, that whole day. I mean, I remember that day very, very well. And Joe Spray had accompanied me, and he had helped me on some of these sessions. He'd come out and filmed, and kept the camera rolling for we got some really nice rushes, like a whole nice lot of footage from that day that's not actually in the video. But when you go to a spot like that, John had turned me on to that spot. I really wanted to go back there and film it. I had a few ideas of things that I wanted to do there, but it's also somebody's home. It's also an estate. It's also post initial lockdown, there's a general sense of tension, I suppose, and being in and around people's homes, falling over, grabbing onto stuff, just being a general noisy nuisance, as it were. That kind of stuff. You're really coming into sessions, especially at housing estates like that, and thinking, I know what this looks like. I know that people are already frayed and maybe anxious or whatever else, and I'm potentially could be adding to that with what I'm trying to do here. So some of the time I would want to kind of almost get a sense of permission for what I'm doing at the spot. Sometimes there's no one around, so you're just kind of doing what you're doing, and hopefully it's not too much of an abrasion. But that spot particularly, there was this rather eccentric woman who was just sort of hanging out. I think she was talking to a mate. She was talking very kind of loudly, and she was very funny, and she was just like clearly a staple kind of resident who was just about all the time.
Yeah,
She eventually
one of the
made
characters of the estate.
exactly. And so she eventually approached me and was just like, oh, I used to skate down Streatham Ice Rink, and in my go-go skirt and all of this kind of stuff. And just she had approached me, and just began a really, really fun short chat. And I had noticed the car obviously by now, and it was the inside of this car was like, it looked like your food disposal bin. It just looked like the inside of a food disposal bin. It was like moldy, like the seats were all moldy. It was really screwed up.
Right.
It was gutted inside essentially. Some of the tires were flat. It was clearly like done.
Right. So it was an abandoned car. It wasn't a functioning car. Right.
It was nowhere near functioning.
Right.
It was never going to function again. And so eventually I'd kind of found out that the car was owned by the woman who had approached me and who was really fun. It was her friend whose car it was. And so after we had spoken for a little while, we kind of got to the sort of agreement, let's say, that it would be okay for me to do that, because essentially, like, you
What
know,
else is going to be
nothing.
done with the car? Yeah.
Yeah. And like I had explained that, this is kind of what we do. I know it looks silly. I know it's loud. And if you want us to go, like, obviously that's the priority, because it's a close, quiet, like, estate of houses. But she was really juiced, really stoked, really excited by it all, stayed and watched a few, and then gave the thumbs up. And then one of her mates came and also gave the thumbs up and was like, Shanika's not gonna mind. That was whose car it was, Shanika. So,
Of course it is.
yeah, I
That's
got I got the permission, I suppose, and that's why I only did it a few times because I felt super I felt like it was a piss take. I mean, I've always wanted to skate a car or a van, like an abandoned something. You see people like, but
yeah.
that they're only fleeting. That those sorts of opportunities are few and far between. And you know, it's like when you see a decent pole jam, they're going to remove that pretty quickly. It's not going to stick around. So, I, it was just one of those things where this is a one-off, and I feel like I've gotten the permission here. This car is absolutely screwed. I'm gonna do it. So,
Um,
and yeah, I just bounced off the bonnet into the bank. It was pretty fun.
yeah, street skating's transient in nature at the best of times because someone will create a new spot, or there'll be new ledges or a rail, and you'll be like, God, these are going to be incredible. Oh well, the weather's crap just now, or we need to come back with a board of wood, and then you come back and the spot's suddenly unskateable. A car or a pole jam just adds a different element to that because you're like, we've literally got days, and then this is no longer even going to exist. So
Yeah, that's it. And it always makes me think of and again, this is something that I think I'm plucking from another podcast that I'd watched, but it sort of makes me think of that Street Fighter bonus game where you're kicking the shit out of the car.
oh,
In
Greg
Street Fighter
Preston was
2
doing it at
Turbo.
the end of
Greg, yeah, that's it. You were
the end
talking to
of
him about that.
I want to say it was Momentum. It was one of the ones he filmed for them, and he was punching the shit out of a car. That's cool. Yeah.
That just made me piss myself. That was brilliant. Yeah, and that's that transient nature of things as well that you spoke about. It's kind of like one of the cool things about street skating. You really never know what's possible. I'd always wanted to like skate a car, but somehow through dialogue I got permission to do it, to sort of do something destructive to property that's seen as like, that's insured, and actually, well, anyway, I know what it looks like. So
all right, okay.
Yeah, it
I
was
also
really
loved,
cool.
I'm pretty sure, did I hear one of the little kids say he's up to no good? Is that what I'm
I think
sure
the kid said he jumped on the car. He
right.
said that, right? He jumped on the
I
car.
was sure I heard him. Oh yeah, maybe I misheard it. Yeah, but I was like,
I
that's
think Scott kind of warped what he had said afterwards.
right.
I'd have to
Maybe
go
that bit.
back on rushes, but yeah, those kids were just like, we got to the point of each of them having one skate on, and then it was just like they were like begging to put both skates on. It's like, yeah, I don't know where your parents are, and like, think this has gone far enough, but their energy and their sort of, they were just stoked to see something like that go down. It's always very cute.
Cool.
It was a cool sequence.
And then what was so that was, you were saying what it was like filming with Scott, making that section using clips that you'd obviously gathered throughout the year. Before that, you obviously had the massive section with John Lee, and you guys were living together in the same house at the time, right?
No, so throughout
When you brought out Devotion, no. All right, I thought he was.
No, so
did I not hear you guys were living together at one point, or have I just made this up?
Yeah,
right.
No, you didn't make that up. So at the beginning of this year, John had moved in, and he moved out about a month ago. Prior to that, John had been living in Reading, and through the whole period of filming for Devotion and whatever other sort of projects were being kind of worked on with some of the other lads, via Johnny's and partnership with whoever, but in that period of time we were very focused on completing that project and doing what we thought we needed to do for that. He was living in Reading, so I might go to Reading sometimes. John would come to London, would come and stay either here or at Bowers or whoever else is. And so we kind of just did it like that, really. He didn't actually end up moving here until the beginning of the year. So for the whole 18 months 2-year period, it was essentially meeting up for sessions as per usual, or actually going out up to Reading to go and film in Reading, because Reading's actually amazing for skating as well, you know, like where John's from. I've actually been going to Reading for, you know, a long time, since the 90s actually. You know, I've been going up to Reading and, you know, kind of
Yeah, because
interested in skating with John and Hayden and,
think he's
you
from
know,
there
Joe
as well, isn't
Coyne.
he? Joe Coyne, that's who I was
Joe
thinking
Coyne,
of. Yeah,
yeah.
Joe Coyne was doing it there originally.
Yeah,
Right,
original
because
Reading crew, 734.
I
Yeah.
didn't know how long you and John had lived together, and I know that your section obviously came out last year originally as a VOD. And
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of got it into my head that you guys were just on an absolute tear and living together in the same house, bouncing ideas off each other all the time. And just because there was like a 12-month period there where it just felt like John was firing out his best stuff, because he came out your section, Bauer's section, which again, I think is
Alex with Vanilla,
James's
right?
best section that he's made.
Mm.
Vanilla, yeah, was around that
Sweet shit
period as
music
well.
for James.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
and it
there's
just
you
felt
can't.
like you guys were both insanely motivated, and then as a result, like that's kind of unheard of that he's made two two separate skaters' best sections that they've ever made. Which I don't know if you take that offensively or not, but like
No.
that, like those are, as far as I'm concerned, like my favorite edits of both you guys.
Yeah, I'm enormously proud to have completed that project and to have gone through everything, just in terms of going out and actually doing it, skating, getting getting through these high moments, you know, like bleeding in pain, you know, and then all of the surrounding chill outs that were needed, whether that was chilling out back at the house or when we were out skating and just sort of after the session, we're just sort of sitting on a patch of grass somewhere all together, having just, some of us, you know, gone through a lot, you know, intensity out street skating, completing these moves. You know, I'm enormously proud, pleased. No one will ever be able to kind of take that from us, you know, like making those films and what kind of devotion looks like objectively to other people. Definitely people have sort of spoken to me and have messaged John or whatever about what they felt from it, what it communicated to them. It seemed to resonate on a few different levels, not just as in terms of, you know, like it's a good skate video. I think clearly it's a good skate video. There's, you know, John and I are both experienced skaters, in and around the culture for most of our lives, you know, both filmers, both skating, both practitioners, both obsessed to some level. And I think a lot of that devotion, as it you know harkens to, is what it came through in the project. And as I said, you know, nothing's going to take that away. An enormous achievement, and it's a big deal, you know, and it was recognized as such as well, you know, for what awards are worth in the inline skating community. I think, you know, for Joey and Todd to kind of recognize us in their awards was something that meant a great deal, you know, especially guys like that who, you know, are so well established in the deep history and aggressive, but took skating and have taken and are taking skating into this diverse kind of terrain of different techniques and practices with the other types of equipment too. So to have that recognition, you know, from them meant a great deal, actually, you know. And I think for James as well, you know, like James, like real good friend of mine. It's been awesome just being in and around him, watching his skills develop, and either getting to film with him, and just watch him kind of go through all of the emotions when he's out skating as well. I mean, that's what it's all about. You know, you see people overcome their barriers, overcome their inhibitions, overcome their challenges, realize the things that they've been thinking about for a long time. And in Sweet Shin Music, you know, John Bauer very well. And
James had to overcome rage on multiple occasions.
yeah, I mean, he's an intense guy to work with. I mean, and so am I. And when you're getting beaten up,
Yeah,
you know, and I
yeah,
guess
yeah.
it's one thing is about getting beaten up. The other thing is like, you know, I'm better than that, you know. I'm kind of, I feel like you know, I'm doing myself a disservice here, so come on, let's step it up, let's get going here. But I just think it's often around getting beaten up and taking, taking a knock. And that's just like, it's very difficult to negotiate around pain. That
Yeah.
that's something that's difficult to just be like, oh well, I'm so zen right now with that, hematoma growing on my under my knee,
Yeah.
because then you're like, oh I've got to get this now, or I'm basically going to have a dead leg in 5 minutes, and then you add pressure to yourself, and it's highly pressurizing. And James, unlike James, like other top skaters, at that level, you're going to get stressed out. It's going to be very difficult to just be like calm about shit. But then sometimes he laces shit early. He laces shit early doors, a few attempts in as well.
Some of the
So
clips where he's rolling away, just you can see how just like
juiced and
giddy he is. He's
surprised
like
and
that was
giddy.
fucking first try. He's like there was no
Yeah.
battle, there was no pain. He's like that just and you can just see
Yeah.
like
No.
the pure joy in his face. Yeah.
Yeah. No. And actually, that certainly in like Sweet Shin music and in parts that John has worked on with James, like that there's this really like honest kind of side of James that's brought out in those parts. And
Yeah.
you see why he's one of the top skaters in London, one of the top skaters in the UK, one of the top skaters we got in the continent, or whatever, over on these sides. He's putting out some of the best material that there is. So yeah, it's definitely. And Alex with Vanilla and so on and so forth, these are top skaters working with a top guy at making at these parts and conceptualizing and pulling together the dopest kind of street skating. And yeah, I would definitely say that. There's yeah, hell yeah.
Your ender in the section, the top sole to top sole. So obviously, John shows the struggle at the start where you take an absolute kicking, and then at the end, it looks like you obviously must have came back to that spot 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
You laced the shit out of that. Now that is a square rail to rail with a shitty sloped run up, and you did top sole to top sole and came clean off the end of that thing. But how pissed are you that Dan Collins skated it in his new section and did top acid to back royale on it?
Well, I'm not really that pissed actually. I mean, I don't think you kind of cock your leg and squirt the pheromones over a spot like
Now
like you've claimed it.
you say that, but some people are very precious about things like that. And if it's an ender to a section, like some people take that shit seriously and they go, "Cool,
Sure.
now I need to go back and one up you because that's my spot." But like,
Yeah, sure. I mean,
so I was just wanting to get your take on it because some people, and you like everyone
I
knows
know.
people that do that are pro skaters that are like, well, no, I'm never letting anyone have that spot. That's my spot. Like,
Yeah, no, I know. And I think if you're inclined to kind of measure yourself up against others by like one upping somebody on a spot that they are well known to have struggled to complete but actually completed with aplomb, then it's kind of self-evident, what that is really, as far as I can see. And I again, like I'm not too concerned about cocking my leg and claiming anything.
I was
I'm
just
I
checking, just making sure.
no, I actually, it's an incredibly difficult spot to skate. It's an epic spot. It's a
It looks
it's a
horrible.
roundabout. It's a huge roundabout, but it's like it's that whole area is within the roundabout. So you kind of have to the cars are all going around and you look inside of it. So it's sort of like this brutal big bank sort of scrap park kind of thing with very scant evidence of like trying to change it. So there was at one point I did a trick there many years ago that Adam Kohler shot doing a mute out
The
of the
air, yeah, because
yeah,
and there's like a double decker bus in the background because
yeah,
I've seen that spot like from different angles in skateboard videos, and I've seen James
yeah.
huck over the fence, and it's always like it looks like the same spot, but then when I'm seeing certain people do tricks on it, I can't. You know when you're always looking for like the other parts of the spot in the
Yeah, yeah.
background, and you're like, I can't see any of the other shit. This can't be the same
Well,
place.
they made a at one point there was a little concrete wedge that just sort of made a transition enough for me to kind of fly up it and just mute out of it. But the whole thing, as I was saying, it's like it's a very very appealing place to go to like get your ender type thing. I think by the time we had gone there to film that, and the discussions that I'd had at the time with John and with a few others who I was sort of saying I was thinking of doing this, and it was just like it was almost like felt like wringing the spot dry kind of thing. I know a lot of people had been there. I'd seen I've forgotten the chap's name. He's one of the James would know, one of the Atlantic Drift fellas who had
Tom
um
Knox?
not Tom Knox, can't remember his name.
Okay.
He's a London based skater. Anyway, he does a heel flip or something recently round the corner, but in the same roundabout area. It's an absolute hammer. And I think that was the last visitation that yielded a really big trick there.
Right.
And for me, like I haven't really ever worked to an ender before. Like, believe it or not, I don't tend to have an ender in mind. Whereas that was maybe the first sort of ender that I was kind of like, well, that does tie this thing together. There's a sort of narrative because I'd sort of been there on so many
Yeah.
occasions, and it wasn't really obvious how I was going to, or how we were going to get this complete. I'd been through the mental torment. I'd been hurt. I'd been cut. I got strained thighs from jumping so many times. I'd spent so many attempts trying to work out the physics of getting onto that rail, and then having just the confidence and basically the courage to just stay on the inside of it, trust you know trust my top soul. I trust it that with my life, with the top soul, and just kind of go for it, really. And it just took a lot to do it. Should it have taken 3 visits? Probably not. I felt like
I don't know. It looks like that's the kind of thing where I just don't think most people would even think of that trick on it. They just go, "Nah, that's taking a serious. That's taking more risk than's necessary." Because you're basically committing to a top soul on the drop side. Like you're committing your body to the
yeah, you
drop
have
side.
to be inside. The
Yeah,
point was like, because when we went there as well, you got to understand that these sorts of spots, there's just filled with glass and pee, and like mattresses where people were once sleeping, and that's not just a kind of, it's more like, well, is somebody coming back to sleep here? So I think I'm just prancing around above somebody's like sleeping spot. And when we'd gone there a couple of times, there was sleeping stuff there. Again, you're sort of taking a mick a little bit in areas where you're just thinking, this is just a sort of an abandoned space, in a way. But it just took ages to really just to jump to it. The first time I legit jumped for it, I did it, and so it speaks to how something works itself into your mind and becomes this mountain to climb. And you're sort of looking up to the sky like, is this going to happen? What kind of force of exterior is going to help this happen, because I've emptied everything inside of me to find my way down from here. And I just it was something quite magical as to how it happened. It really, I can't describe it in any other way. I wrote about it a little bit on the bank website. I've written a couple of essays there and about some of my experiences doing moves and some of the other details or things that came to my awareness about the state of mind that I was in. But yeah, it was really quite a magical thing. And the section sort of ends in that way, I suppose, with that interaction with that lady, really tying it all in, because she was the mental trigger for the thing happening. She had come at the start of that session and was really cool, was really nice. It was like, I'm a teacher and I just like the fact that you guys are out here setting an example, being active and expressive and just being really cool. And then went off, did a shopping. I was there an hour and a half later with John basically tearing my hair, like, oh my God, like, I don't know, man. Like, if this is happening, my thighs were dying. She turned up and I could see her just over there, and she stopped to watch. And then it was just like, all right, okay, let me just show this woman that it's possible. She was really cool. I don't know what happened. It was like a magic, and
yeah,
done. So I don't know how to explain that. I tried to explain it,
yeah.
I tried to write about it, but it was just a little bit of magic. And you could go there and do a switch up over it. You could go back there and do exactly the same move. Nothing will take that experience away. And that's the thing that I value a lot about what happened there on that day. And that sort of ended the devotion part. It's very special to me. It's meaningful to me.
Yeah. What I also like about it is it kind of shows the kind of filmer John is as well, because I like the fact that you went back several times, because that's not just a commitment on your part, that's him investing time in it as well, because he's like,
100%.
I believe in you. And then when you are there for an hour and a half, just try to get one trick. And, sometimes it can be, you only do 5 or 6 attempts in that hour and a half because you're trying to psych yourself up, or it can be a ledge where you're doing 200 attempts. John seems like the kind of person that like sticks with you and just goes, no, well, like, if you're going to keep going, I'm going to keep going. Because you get some filmers or you get some friends that are just like, give it up already. Like, this isn't.
Yeah, it's a bit of a stakeout that's going on for sure. Except the stakeout isn't just sort of, well, actually it is a stakeout. I was going to say, stakeout's about inactivity, but it's about awareness that something that you want to happen is going to go down at any given moment. So you have to be focused, you have to be committed, and you have to be sort of encouraging. You have to balance all of those things and also keep the camera in focus too, and know that with that sort of equipment that you're working with there, that the camera can come out of focus, and you can get something that gets stuck to the lens, and you need to hydrate yourself, and the sun's beating down on you, and there are lots of factors. And I think as a skater who also films a lot as well, which I do, I kind of, I know the solids that people, have done me for whatever purpose, whether it's just because they wanted to film something on their phone, or whether, I'm doing something formal, like we're working on a formal section together. We've spoken about this, we've agreed to just go full throttle, into this,
Yeah.
and empty our gas tanks in this period of time to achieve something. So I know what it takes, and I'm appreciative of anybody who's like dedicated some minutes to filming me, and I'll I'll give back with some interest as well. I mean, that's one of the things that I find pressurizes to me the most when I'm skating, is the idea that somebody or some people are like waiting for me to do this, or waiting for us to do this. That is pressurizing. I'm driven in that sense. I know what, I kind of want from my practice out skating. I know what I want from my session out skating. And when we're filming, I also know what I want from that experience too. So that's why I keep cameras close to me in terms of pointing them at my homies as well, because that process of reflecting on those moments and that work on that skills and on all of those things, I know that my friends might not be as confident to ask, or might not be as mindful of saying, oh, I want to film a part this year, or I'm going to film like 3 parts this year. I like to be suggestive and say, how about you, do you fancy this, let's just do this, let me be the guy, let me film, let me follow you, don't worry, I'm on it. Like, you don't have to worry about that whole filming anxiety of like, oh, do you mind? No, I don't mind, I'm down. Like, I'll film the shit out of you, and so there's a bit of give and take, I suppose, when it's like that. But to round off on finishing projects like Devotion, I mean, yeah, it's exactly what it takes. It does take that commitment. It takes that um yeah, like agreement that we're probably going to spend quite a bit of time together, and
Yeah.
for you to do the moves, for me to get the moves in the optimum way. And John was definitely a guy that, if he looked back at his filming and goes, oh, I'm not too stoked on that, then he's going to say, look, I feel like we got a better one in us, actually, because this happened here, I slipped here, and I jerked the camera a little bit, or it's gone out of I mean, obviously if the camera goes out of focus, you're fucked. It's just like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is all stuff that's to do with that process. This is all stuff that you know we we sort of have been engaged in, like, for years since we were kids, basically. So it's really quite something to see where some of the guys have gone with their skills, both holding a camera and being in front of it. And even guys like who you never thought, of as of being in front of the camera, like in this recent video I did on for the bank site, on the spot. You got Tom Sharman, MVP, up in this bitch. and so Tom's a guy he walks around with the camera,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and so, you know, in 2020 it was just like, all right, Tom's doing some stuff and he's really excited, you know, about being in front of the camera right now. So I like to jump on that. If anybody wants to film a part, they got an idea, like, oh, you know, I was thinking of doing this, or maybe we should work on a whatever, I don't know, whatever. Like, for instance, working with Scott on this part, of course various ideas pop into my mind about, you know, what it would be like to work with Scott a little bit more, or get a bit closer to him, and maybe put the camera on him a little bit, you know. So I would say that there's a likelihood of that happening, you know.
Nice. Um, After Devotion, you came out with the Go project, Leon promo.
Yeah,
What you were on BHC for years. What happened there?
yeah, man. BHC is just, that's just kind of like a family thing, really, in the sense of, like, regardless of skate, spono stuff, industry stuff, which is like a flimsy industry at best, and that's like across the board, really, you know. um you know, these, like, Mark's like a really, really close friend of mine. A lot of the guys from Wells and Bristol, you know, Sambo or Al Jones, where these are like friends of mine. These are guys who, like, I'm just cool with, who I like a lot, you know. So my allegiances are to sort of people rather than, you know, brands as such. And I suppose, like, I just been working with Mark and been working with BHC for a while. Mark went through really, really horrific kind of period in his life. That's some personal stuff, family stuff that he had to get through. And essentially, you know, at the time, I think, you know, there was a reconfiguring. Just before all of that stuff happening, there was like kind of a reconfiguring of the BHC team. And, you know, maybe at the time, Mark, I wasn't, how do I put this? Maybe I wasn't skating my best. Maybe skating seemed different. Maybe the infrastructure of social media and my particular presence and my, like, commodified value or whatever stuff like that maybe wasn't where it is right now. And maybe there are a range of factors contributing to that, you know, both like my own sense of health, or where I was at with my practice and how I was trying to, like, you know, do the moves and that kind of stuff. But, you know, I'm basically, it's a long-winded kind of explanation of saying, I think the reconfiguring of BHC at the time was a little bit of a setback for me personally, in terms of how much I thought I had to give in terms of skating, just as a skater, not as like homies, not as like, look, this is, you know, as I explained, you know, BHC is more like a family thing. You know, I'm always going to be close to Mark and et cetera, and Paul and all of the guys, you know. So I think after Mark had gone through this dark period in his life, you know, I was working closely with Jake with all things Loco related. You know, Jake again is one of my homies from virtually day one. You know, we're both of a similar age. We've both made our strides in skating on a par, and, you know, I've ended up respecting Jake a lot for, you know, his establishment of Loco Skates as a skater, one of the sickest UK skaters. So if there are any suggestions from him to, like, work on things related to the brand Loco, to the shop, he's supported me unequivocally for the whole time that I've had an association with Loco Skates. He's just been a good friend. And just in terms of my status as, like, a rider, a pro rider, you know, for whatever use that term is worth, he has been the main guy that has really supported that for me. So he approached me really to kind of work on the wheel with Go project, and it was kind of a no-brainer. You know, I'm a guy that likes to you know, just keep my options open when it comes to my skate practice. The hardware itself was something that I tried and fell in love with, and it was about some of the techniques that I wanted to start becoming better at. You know, I wanted to start improving slides. I wanted to start improving my flatland technique. I wanted to use slightly bigger wheels. The softness of the Go project and the profile and the size 60 or the 62 for me was something I couldn't turn back from. I tried it and I just couldn't turn back from it. And it was really how good the product felt. And that was before there was even rumblings of a wheel with my name on it as like an associate, not team rider, 'cause it's not really how Jake works, but it's sort of like a guest wheel kind of thing.
Yeah, because I've noticed with other Go project stuff, yeah, he just basically gives them an upfront payment or whatever. Like I'm sure, because I remember him being quite transparent about it when he started it with the Barons,
Yeah.
with like Dom and Richie and stuff like that, and going, that is probably how more sponsorships could be, because just giving someone free product endlessly and you may or may not get something in return just isn't a business concept that makes sense, especially for
Yeah.
skate companies. Like there's people that have been sponsored by skate companies for like 10, 15 years and just getting free product, and you're like, you're not really doing much in return for this.
No, and that's when I say the industry, in a sense is quite flimsy. I mean, I don't mean that like in terms of where it's maintained and sustained strength is actually remarkable, and it's about like that desire and that trailblazing kind of energy of people like your John Julios and your Brian Sheemers and so on and so forth. But it's very, very touch and go as to whether that can sustain salaries and so on and so forth. I mean, look, I accepted that fucking a long time ago. I've been a professional nurse for like 10 years. I've been practicing as a nurse for 10 years. I've been training for 13. It's like I knew that there wasn't really the kind of professional sustainability of inline skating. So my associations, my sponsorships, if you will, I think prior, maybe at that time of BHC reconfiguring things, stopping with BHC essentially, that was a really rich period of development for me as a skater. In the last 5 years, I'd say since I turned 30, it's just been a seismic kind of change in how I practice, and like my IQ with regards to what I'm actually doing on my skates, and so my value as like a sponsored person, I think it came a little bit later. I mean, I had like a pro skate in 2004, but it was just kind of premature, and there was just a lot about that was just premature. It was like, I'm supposed to be a pro person, a pro rider at this point, but I didn't really have the sorts of anchors that I would have wanted. And I had big holes in a lot of parts of my practice that wouldn't warrant that status, and that was a long time ago. So I just think Jake has been able constantly to kind of support me in a sense, like as a pro, basically, right? With these sorts of ideas, that's an extension towards me. He respects me, and I really, really value that in the sort of industry that isn't really able to kind of support, like guys like myself who are getting a little bit older but who are actually finding their feet at the point that I'm at, basically. And that's because I've grown a lot upstairs, and I've taken care of myself quite a lot too, and I believe in skating enough to want to take it into the deep waters and be present and relevant into my late 30s, as many of the established pro skateboarders and other pro action sport artists or athletes or whatever are able to. And so it's I mean, I don't really know what I was trying to explain with sort of my association with brands and sort of sponsorship deals is I've been really lucky. I've been really blessed to have had that kind of support. I've had access to hardware. As I was saying earlier on, it's like at this stage in the game, you got to just be like super juiced. That you got people to go out and skate with, and equipment, and an industry that's growing, flimsy but growing,
Yeah.
to support that happening. But I keep my doors open, and yeah, like skating bigger wheels and skating flat setup and the hardness and all of those things just really appealed to me. And these wheels for me, there's no kind of going back really in terms of the wheels. Like my skate experience every time is what I want. So but yeah, everyone associated with BHC, Mark, that's my fam. Like, that's the homie. Like, skating is you know, it's always going to be that. I'm going to go skate with Mark. I'm going to go skate with the homies. But you know, Jake is also one of my long time supporters, unequivocally, and it made sense to work with him.
Nice.
Yeah, man.
You mentioned it, and I was thinking back in this, and I actually had to. One of my friends, Scott Riddles, is like a skate encyclopedia, and he can't remember years, but he can remember like when skates come out, and that's how he judges like periods of time. And I was like, and I messaged him before this, and I was like, I'm pretty sure like Leon had one of the first UK pro skates, and I was like, I can't remember whether it was Leon or Tyrone Brissett.
We both did. Yeah,
but that's I couldn't remember who came first. Was it Tyrone or you?
I don't know, man.
Because Chaz obviously had Salomons, but that was like a little bit later.
Yeah, Chaz had a Sally. Ty may have had. I'm just guessing. I don't know. Well, I don't know, but they were really similar. They were really similar times.
Riddles thought that Tyrone came first, but it was maybe within a year of each other, or like it was like that close. So
it was in 2004. But yeah. I mean, you know, it was quite close proximity, and obviously Ty at the time was you know, a huge skater in the UK, you know, big presence physically and, you know, in the publications and whatnot. That's kind of
insane. Yeah, it's like an insane accolade to have, because you were one of the first in your native country to have a pro skate, and to date there's only like a handful of UK skaters who have had pro skates. So like there's you, Tyrone, Sam Crofts in recent years, he's about to get a second one, and Ollie Short, and then obviously Chaz that we mentioned. That's it.
Yeah, it's a fairly like small.
So you belong to like an incredibly inclusive, exclusive club. Like that's insane.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought on it too much, mostly because
it wasn't the purest of experiences, because
it kind of sucked in some ways, but I don't really think on the name thing too much, because as I said, it's like at the time of like signing on the dotted line and that happening, you know, I was still in a bit of a dream world about what this all was. You know, I was early 20s, you know, I'm signing a contract here with a skate company. This is the ideal scenario. I mean, if I rewound back to, you know, year 11 at school, or when I was just sort of into it, but you know, I was thinking I'm going to do this forever for sure. You know, I never, you know, you could never really envisage signing a contract, getting professional or whatever contracts, and, you know, getting products, going in the warehouse and taking everything, not taking everything, but, you know, having the shopping trolley experience and all that stuff. But, you know, the gloss was definitely taken off of it by, you know, how it all transpired. Firstly with the name, which was just like, do you want to sort that out? Oh no, we can't. All right, sweet.
It also seems like that seems like the easiest thing to get right, because it's like, I don't understand. I don't understand how that can go wrong.
Sign a fucking contract. You literally go check your files. Go look in your files. It's fucking written down. But I mean, it's more like I wasn't, you know, I wasn't even scratching the surface at that point. You know, that was a long time ago. At this point in time, I wasn't even scratching the surface. I could skate. I know what I'd done up to that point, and I know that, you know, the sorts of moves that I was doing and had some, you know, good value to them, switch ups and handrails and doing all that kind of stuff, but I wasn't really scratching the surface. So, you know, that period is it's sort of quite distant and early, and not almost you know, some of the sheen taken off of it. But, you know, I will say that you
said there was another issue with it. You said the name took it off you, but you suggested that something else happened. So what else happened?
Well, I mean, being as though this podcast is, you know, sort of all kind of weird and corrupt shit razors involved.
And
I
in
suppose
my
like
defense, that's not actually, I would happily have it not be, but it's not my fault that everyone that seems to
nah,
go
well,
through
it's
their
no
doors
fucking
seems to have a
coincidence,
negative
mate.
experience. That's not
It's
on
no
me.
it,
That's on them.
well it seems like it's not like it's not a coincidental thing. It seems to be the trope. It seems to be the sort of spine of the organization is really not concerned with the kind of skaters' interests really on a fundamental level. I mean, if anything that from if my experience is to go by, it's that it's just like you literally the one thing that like you want to kind of put on your mantle and go, there it is with the name. It's like you kind of got that bit wrong, which is
That's what I
it's
was going to
whatever. Because
ask. Do you still have one of
yeah,
your
of course.
skates? Right.
Yeah, of course. I got a couple brand new sets, or no, I've got one brand new set, and then Andy Sperry, um, one of my absolute bros, like for my birthday a few years ago, he procured like a size 8 pair that are in a
Okay.
really good nick and gave them to me for my birthday. So, yeah, I've got a couple sets. I'll skate them or whatever. The other thing was I got paid a royalty for the skate,
I was going to ask if
and
you actually got money for your pro skate because
yeah, I got money, but I initially got too much money. So what happened was I got paid 33 grand by mistake.
that's
Yeah,
Danny Beer money. That's Danny
yeah, I got
Beer
that.
them skates money.
I got that DB money in 2004. Um, I suspect it's an issue. I mean, they're getting names wrong on skates. You can't trust these guys with maths either. So they say it's English, maths. I wonder how they are at their chemistry and that. But obviously some screw up maths wise ended up sending me £33,000. Think of this, yeah. I was working in ASDA at the time of like waiting for this payment that it wasn't clear when it was going to arrive. So I was checking my bank statement like every day at lunch because we have ATMs outside the store. And then the day that the money finally come in, I went and checked it. Obviously, think of me in my green Asda fleece. I'm working in a supermarket. Who knows where this skating thing is going? And then I checked. I typed my pin in, 33,394 quid. I'm like, what the
I would have thought I'd had a stroke. I'd be like, that's not, I
I'm
can't,
like,
okay, I'm blind. I can't read, right?
what
This
is
is
actually
something's,
happening? I'm like, oh my days, they made a mistake. Someone's made a mistake. So I'm gonna buy a house. And then I went I went and checked, I went and got my mate who I worked with. And I was like, mate, come and have a look at this, and because to make sure I'm not tripping. And lo and behold, I had that money. I sat on it for a month, didn't say shit. Because like I was kind of like, if somebody's made a mistake here, then I almost am going to like plead some kind of ignorant thing and just forget about it kind of thing. And then maybe in a year, I've got like 50 grand or something. And then if no one said anything, then I'm like, I'm going to get a house or
yeah.
whatever it is. I'm going to take this money, move it, invest it, whatever. I don't care. Somebody's made a mistake. It's not me. I don't care. Anyway, I went to the bank. It wasn't like written in print that Sunshine Distribution had paid the money. So I was like, even better, it's definite mistake. Somebody's just paid somebody's just paid money to my account. That's mine. And then Andy Wagner actually phoned me to my like my landline home phone number when I was living with my parents. And that was obviously the moment where I made the decision: do I exist or do I not exist? And like in the sense of like, sorry,
Nope.
who you looking for?
Wrong number.
Yeah, don't know who that is. But obviously I made I was a good boy there. Obviously, you know may rue that decision. Maybe there's a ruining of that decision that's taken place over the years, but I wired them most of the money back because it was actually a mistake on part of Razors, leaving me with £33,000 for a month. I went to Slam Jam. I went to Slam Jam with the money in my account, and I remember on the night out afterwards, I was like showing people. I was like, look, I got like I got 33 grand from Razors, but I might have to give it back, but I don't know.
So
But
what did you end up with after they took their money back? Because they
I don't
must
give a fuck.
they
I
were
don't know.
probably
I think it
selling
was
so
like
many Shimas at that time that they just had they weren't keeping track of their accounts at all. It was
something
probably
like
going wild.
it was something like 1600. It was something like that. It was like 1600 quid. Yeah.
That's that's really low.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Because
I
well,
can't remember. It wasn't. It was
I'm not going to
something
name
like that.
names, but I know other pro skaters that walked away with like 6, 7 grand, and they couldn't have been producing more of their skate than they were of yours.
Nah, I don't know like how they were set out in terms of the status of like my pro boot was, like certain riders who are more established who were like the household names, if you will, are obviously going to command a
Yeah,
greater a product made and probably command via the contractual stuff and the discussions, if there even is that kind of thing going on, a little bit more of a fee. Whereas me, I was just like, you got a contract? Yeah, let's have a look at it, and just
tick.
it, yeah, because I'm like 20, I'm like
Yeah,
21. I'm thinking, fucking hell yeah, like you want to sign me up, do you? I'm on it. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything
yeah,
at that point, so I was like stoked. And £1,600 for going out inline skating and like doing moves was fucking, yeah, all right. It wasn't. That's the thing, right now, I mean, it's really not that much different essentially, but there is like clearly a more diverse marketplace for inline skating. I think, right now in 2020, this boom that we've all clearly seen happening, it will equate to sales and will equate to more participation and will equate to, you know, more uptake and aggressive stuff, or whatever, like freestyle stuff. Even the 360 videos and all of that kind of stuff will still excite people in terms of what it's like to be in a metropolis and just sort of have stuff whizzing by you.
yeah,
It's quite, kind of exciting like that. I know some films have utilized some of that tech in the past, with 360 bullet time stuff, but it employed on skates is a pretty cool thing as well. So I do think like the flimsy industry is becoming a little bit more stable and a little bit more trustworthy. And I suppose riders like Danny, who, is an exceptional, like extraordinary kind of talent, whether it's skating or otherwise, but, skating is definitely where he excels, can have a fucking workable, livable salary. I mean, it's good. It's definitely a good thing. And if some of those other guys who we, really admire can also be supported to do their thing, then, that's absolutely awesome. I'm really stoked that skating's actually in that position to support a few more people, and there's a lot more like brands and whatnot popping up, and people are interested in fashion and products and,
yeah.
lines of clothing and bits of hardware. There's a lot more choice there, and people can have their like little grassroots things grow into something that's a little bit more stable part of our constellation, and stuff that we're ingesting. Even platforms like Wheel Scene, like This Week in Blade, or
Yeah,
whatever. I
yeah.
mean, these things are resources, and it expands the culture a little bit, and it aggregates the things that are going on, that gives sort of notability to what's happening. It gives adds value to it. It shows that there is this actually established kind of there's an established culture. It's still it's showing right now. It's pretty cool. Yeah, for sure.
Do you ever wonder now, like I do this all the time, like I think back to like conversations I've had with people or things I could have said differently or acted differently, or I think it's called like afterthought or something, where you basically just go, oh, if I could go back and change that or do that, what would have happened differently in my life? Do you ever wonder, because you obviously skated for like loads of different brands. You were on Razors, then you were on Valo. Were you on NIM or was it just SSM?
Um, Good question.
Because obviously there was like the transition period, but you were, I definitely
Yeah,
remember you being on SSM. I just couldn't
yeah,
remember
there
whether
was
it
a
was,
sort of there was a building of things with Nim because Ollie is a very close friend of
yeah,
mine,
because
and so
he
we
got
were kind
on
of
NIM at the end, but then,
we
yeah,
were
yeah,
walking that walk together kind
right,
of thing. And Moreno as well as another guy who I'm very close with. So we were sort of like grouped together a little bit post Valo and pre SSM. So I sort of started to walk that walk and then,
right. Thought as much.
sort of was on SSM from that point onwards. Yeah, I was on like the kind of I've forgotten the different teams,
Like bloodlines or whatever it's called. Yeah,
like the
something like
Europe
that.
bloodline
Godfather.
or
Yeah,
the
something like that. Yeah,
bloodline.
yeah.
A lot of blood reference, basically. Yeah.
Do you ever wonder how things would have panned out if you'd stayed with Razors or if you'd stayed with Fallow? Like if you just like rode it out and saw what happened?
Yeah, I talk about that often. I mean, when the people who know me really well, who I hang out with and chat to, sometimes, when we talk about life and we talk about skating and stuff that's happened, we'll often think of things like that. I mean, it was self-evident with Razors and being associated with that brand that, after the sort of skate had come out and I was basically done within a year after that. It sort of left such a bad taste in my mouth that, even then, early being young and just kind of, a bit of a scrape, like, yeah, yeah, I'll skate for you, like, whatever. I mean, maybe he
Yeah.
wasn't like that, but you know what I'm saying? I was like young,
Yeah,
dumb,
just
and
well, just yeah,
now,
young and keen. Yeah.
yeah, just well want to be sponoed and that will do sort of thing. But even in my early years, that it was still just really like just feels so dissed by that a little bit, just it just beggars belief that you could get that wrong. And actually I'm not really that kind of person. Even then I knew I'm not the kind of person to just be like, yeah, that was cool. It actually wasn't cool. And there was just some other energy that just wasn't that cool. But I'm not gonna, I wouldn't be able to be more specific than that because it was ages ago. And some of the guys who you've spoken to have obviously got more like recent,
Yeah.
things that weren't so good. But my experience was essentially a bit of an ideal experience in that, I did the whole like shopping trolley, like sponsorship dream thing, got a skate, got the name wrong, that sucks. I think I'm good. And yeah, I skated Valo after that because John Julio's obviously an idol. I mean,
Oh,
you'd have to sort of use that
he's like the
word.
first guy I looked up to. Yeah, like I
One of the
remember being a
first
kid and being
guys,
like, that
yeah,
guy's
like
the man.
yeah, like basically a megastar. I had him sign my yellow K2s at PlayStation when him and Petty and Latimer,
Oh,
no, him,
for
Petty.
England tour.
Yeah, it was England tour. Yeah, I had both. So it was a bit of a no-brainer, and because the style of the brand, the look of the skates, just how John carried himself from like an aesthetic, like outwardly what he looks like was always something that I admired. His stilo, like the way that he employs his techniques, the hovering topsole, just the back Nugans. I'd always modeled my back Nugans on mini ramp. But like there are a lot of things from childhood that had sort of modeled, maybe not modeled, but I just admired him a hell
Yeah,
of a lot. So with Valo, that obviously took me in that direction to want to kind of feel all of that style, all of those style points, and try and incorporate that into this echelon of my skating kind of thing. And so I think for Razors, it was really like it was self-evident that that wasn't good enough, and I was just going to leave. I mean, I think I would feel almost like a bit dirty, if I had sort of carried on, like I'm sort of not worth much. Essentially, I'm not worth enough to kind of get that detail right. And I'm a young man at this point in time who wants to get more things right in his life. I don't want to get things wrong. I'd already gotten quite a few things wrong and had made quite a few mistakes, at my early 20s. So I wasn't really down with that kind of thing. And I suppose with Valo, I was it wasn't like I was sort of like on kind of thing, and with the UK riders for the most part, and I'll just sort of speak in a kind of blanket kind of way. I feel like none of the guys in the UK have ever really been taken, you know, how do you say this, as sort of seriously as our counterparts in the US, for instance, by brands based elsewhere, particularly in the US. I think our culture and our scene is sort of difficult to get a clear view of, maybe, and maybe communication and managing riders in other countries is always something that is just, it's just tricky. You have to be very busy to do that properly. At any rate, I
Oh
just,
no, like it's true. Like if Ollie hadn't, cashed in his student loan and went to the States, he probably would never have got a pro skate. Like,
yeah,
let's be honest, he went in there and like put himself in front of people's faces, and that's how he got to where he was. And that's how most skaters who make it big from other countries do it. Like they spend a lot of time in the States.
yeah, he spent a lot of time in the Skates, and he almost had to like sort of almost act. And I don't mean that in a
Oh no,
sort of
like he reinvented
contentious
himself. Yeah,
contentious
he
kind
was
of
a great
way.
skater, but he looked like every other skater, and until he reinvented himself, and
Yeah, and
he still had the skating ability to back it up, but now he had a marketable image as well. Yeah, I think that's complete. It's not. I don't think that's offensive or like that's a fair assessment of what happened.
I think so. I mean, and then Ollie obviously left Valo, and the circumstances that I can't really speak to, but I know that the politics of teams and of salaries, and when it push comes to shove, there's just not enough to go round. So what happens when that's the situation on a team? What's because these guys are all like stars, they're all um extraordinary and unique. They're all very talented. They should all be warranted salaries in their own right, each of them, but there's just not enough to go around. And so ultimately Ollie essentially left skating from that point, and that didn't really have like a knock-on effect to me. I think Ollie was always destined to kind of walk his own walk, essentially away from skating. Who knows? I mean, he'd have to explain that himself. But for me, like, being in London, kind of wanting as much as I possibly could from like being involved with some brands, and maybe wanting to, build like my status with certain brands as much as I possibly could. But ultimately, all it meant was just me going out skating and skating this hardware, and enjoying my experience. It never really felt like it was going to lead, to anything. It didn't feel like there was like I felt like after Razors that the professional path was done. I was just like, that is done. Like I've got to find my way that's not a revolving around skating. Literally, as soon as that happened, and my mum was sort of, doing the proverbial kind of kicking up the backside after that. She's like, well, it didn't work out, so you're probably going to have to figure it out now, mate. Which ultimately is what it meant. But at that point, I was kind of not really invested in sort of this. If it was if there was some kind of pathway that was clear and it was offered to me, then I probably would have walked through the door. But my personal journey has been to get to where I am right now, which is getting through the scratching of the surface, really developing my concept of how I want to move on skates, what kind of things I'm open to practicing, filming, so on and so forth, and pulling everything, all of my knowledge, all of my experience, all of the cultural things, all of the things that I like to show to where I am now. And maybe when I was skating Valo, I wasn't the finished article. Even with SSM, I look back at some of the footage, and I look back at, what was out there of me, and I could be very critical about some of those things. With that being said, it's like, those are all moments, those are all periods of time that I'd spent very fondly with people who I care dearly about. So there's always this different lens to look through it. Ultimately my journey was to go sort of round the houses to get here, right? Which is, I feel more like adept and comfortable and secure and open, than
Yeah.
I ever have at this point right now. So, I think everything sort of, to avoid the cliche, has happened the way that it was really supposed to happen. I moved from in these different ways because I felt like I wanted to, and I felt like at the time that was the right move to do. And it was really about people, as I said, like Ollie and Moreno from like Valo, like these are two guys whose skating speaks for itself. They're exquisite
Yeah.
practitioners of
Yeah,
skating.
definitely.
You know, obviously Mark, who has continued, his practice. He's like my, he's the GOAT discussion. Moreno personally is never going to be too far. You talk about pure street skaters, you talk about guys with grace and conventional skill set, aggressive skating, who just make it look beautiful, who are aesthetically just satisfying to watch skating in every respect. It's a guy like Moreno. So I was like, yeah, if you're doing that, I'm going to do that with you guys. It's about you guys, and you're doing that. So
You've definitely had a unique path when it comes to it, because yeah, getting a pro skate that early on, or that like quickly in your skating life or whatever, and then it feels like everything past, yeah, like you said, it's been kind of like all over the place, but I think it's led to you like being more creative and more self-sufficient, because you've obviously now made like several of your own videos. If anything, it feels like you're more productive now than you ever were
mhm.
like during your early years, because you used to always have loads of footage and like Ollie videos and Chris Doughty videos and stuff like that, but it was never like your sections during that time. You rarely had sections back then, whereas now it feels like over the last 5 years you've produced more sections now than ever before.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I
I
always
think
wanted to be
obviously there was
the
making bank as well, like doing the website, the videos, like basically creating your own outlet, which I think more skaters should do. Like you've got people like Nils making their own channel, and like
hell yeah.
Trey, who are very personable, so they're good in front of the camera. Whereas you've just decided you want a home for things that you create.
Yeah, kind of. I think that's the right way to think about it. That there's a home for things that we all like to create. I mean, the group that is active right now in London are extraordinarily creative. These guys are overflowing with ideas when it comes to putting skates on, from Sam Crofts to Neil Ingle, to James Bauer, to Sharman, to guys who come and visit, like Gauthier Kawasi, who's a Parisian chap who, I'm friends with, who came out in that on the spot flick, Simon Isles, these guys. I mean, it's like it's full to the brim in terms of ideas and places to go and practice new ideas of skating with. And you know London's always been fairly vibrant. It's always had like a plethora of people in it skating. But um right now, especially with Jamie and Blake running the sort of Capital Rollers side of things, which Capital Rollers again is sort of like it describes, or it was sort of like the original kind of London crew. Basically, it was like the Capital Rollers kind of
Well,
thing, and
yes,
there were some videos in the
It's
past.
evolved over the years. It used to be mega cliquey and
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
and now it's turned into more of a community based positive thing. Was because
Yeah, there's some
there's a big
events.
crew thing for a while everywhere in skating that was really not positive at all. It was
No, it
basically
was.
just a way of alienating other groups of people.
I think so. I think there's something that you kind of you can be a bit prickly from people on the
Yeah.
outside, because it's sort of, this is us, and we're tough guys, and we stick together no matter if you're cool or if you're trying to rob us. Like either way, we're sort of sticking together, and you're not just sort of like coming in and gaining access to what we've got going on here, for whatever reason it was at that point. We're a lot more protective of that kind of thing when we were younger, because we just sort of got that brashness and that sort of, yeah, we're tough guys or whatever it
Yeah.
is, and you lean into that a little bit as well. I mean, I know that there's a few people who had this sort of sense of me from years ago, of like this guy who they're like were intimidated of, or something like this. They had these sort of different notions of like what kind of person I am, just based on what I was sort of looking like or whatever. So we all lent into that a little bit years ago, and Capital Rollers now, it's like a home for formal events that can take place with a grassroots feeling to it, with the skate park as a hub, as we was talking about earlier on. It's a different feeling thing at the skate park now. So synthesizing that energy to have nice grassroots events that just celebrate the fact that we've actually got a scene, that we've got a culture, and it is established. And we can have our little Instagram sites and put our little videos out. We've got professional, content creators, videographers, photographers who just happen to like love this thing and pour a lot of time into like producing elite level material out of what's going on. So it's like that brimming has needed a few homes with what's going on in London. So Bank is because basically, I'm just so tenacious when it comes to, the practice, the filming. I haven't got kids or a mortgage as yet. That's not really the pathways that I've been on. So, when it comes to just sort of being the expressive kind of unbridled Leon, a lot of that gets put into like this sort of skating stuff. So, I didn't want to have like a YouTube channel that was just like my name or something, because there's a whole lot of shit out there that's already got my name on it and whatnot. And I know I'm going to be putting things together and making things, and you get a bit self-conscious about your own name, your own standing in a relative small kind of thing. So I kind of wanted something that brought together the sort of feeling of like London aggressive street skating, which kind of seems to have been the meeting spot that we always used to meet at, which was Bank. But there you go, it's sort of like a bank is a thing. You're like skating, there's also money in the bank too, all of those inferences, all of that, whatever you want it to be. But either way, it's a home for that content of some of these other fellas. And Capital Rollers also got the videos and that coming out too as well. So it's just about a home for this, so much action that goes on. And I've only got so much time to do stuff that's skating, because I've got my job too, and all of the administrative stuff that goes on with my job too. So I'd always like to do more, like I want to do more when it comes to like productions, Bank and whatnot. But ultimately the bread and butter of it is just going out skating and filming what's happening. And that's what definitely going to keep going with that. We got lots of things to kind of get on with over in the next few years. I feel really positive about that, for sure.
Yeah, I would definitely say you're one of the most productive, prolific skaters I can think of. Who do you, right? I was thinking of this the other day. I was like, I can't think of anyone who's had more street sections than Leon. And then I was like, the only other one I could come up with was Lomax. But I was like, Lomax has kind of got an unfair advantage because he's in a much more like hospitable climate for blading.
Yeah, sure.
So who do you think has filmed more street sections over the years, you or Nick? I think it might be quite close.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like formal, and I use that word, I guess for no use of a better term, in terms of like where, you've got somebody who you're going to be working with who's going to film and probably chop the piece. They may have to spend a little bit of time setting up their equipment, and you're putting some of your safety gear on for some of the shit that you're going out to do. I think those sort of preliminary factors really count towards whether this is like a formal part or not. I think because Nick will take some of his content into the blog space, he'll take some of his stuff into the 360 space. He's actually like really quite funny on camera as well. There's a lot of like to camera personality stuff too. So in a way, like his sort of content is building that brand of Nick Lomax as a personality as much as it is as a guy who's just about. Literally, his blog series is out and about. And so Barcelona being a mecca, as it were, is actually as much of a mecca for just sort of like freestyle kind of fitness, non-aggressive stuff as it is for people going to grind stuff. It's actually maybe more.
That's why I was going to say, I think it is a lot closer than people realize, because Nick has only made one formal section in the past several years, and that was for Blader Gang. And before that, it was Broke.
Yeah.
And then before that, it was like skate promos and like Baron promos and things like that. But I think if you actually like stacked your both years together, not like the out and about and the vlog stuff and things like that, I think it was just like legit sections. I think you guys would actually be relatively even in numbers.
Yeah, I mean, Nick is a guy who I've got like an awful lot of respect for. I know that his experience of just being in Barcelona, I don't think it's quite the kind of like hunky dory sort of you're in skate heaven and you should just be like shitting out sections.
Oh yeah, no,
I
absolutely.
think
Like there's a whole host of external pressures and bills to pay, and yeah,
all of
definitely.
that stuff. And
Yeah.
I think, being a rider for a company like Powerslide, where they've got like a really diverse range of products where, he's not saying, look, I'm an aggressive skater and I'm going to do like grind related stuff and whatever, like just aggressive skating. He's going to use all of the different equipment, wheels, and just stamp his mark onto those products with his like unique kind of presentation of skating, which is something that is just been what he's needed to do, really. I don't know if he's had the company to go out and film the kind of sections that we're like working on here in London, for instance. I think
Possibly, yeah, 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 yeah. I
I
know what you mean. Yeah,
I just there's so many things that count towards getting to the point of like we're doing like a part, we're going to do a part together. It's also like the kind of equipment you're using as well. I mean, I think with camcorders, for instance, there's just something about operating of the camcorder, and you're over there, the subject doing the move, I'm over here filming it, that counts towards how this thing's going to look. Obviously, if you're filming yourself, that's kind of a different thing. It's not really, that's not a part, even though it might be a 4-minute video on YouTube. I wouldn't have said that that's like a part,
yeah,
but
yeah. I'm
it's
definitely
all
not
it's
counting
all
as yeah
nah,
the like
yeah.
solo stuff. Yeah,
But I just I don't know. I think I know I'm really prolific. I know I am. I'm
we all
obsessive.
know you're really prolific. Like
So
I think everyone is aware of that by now.
yeah, it's really I finished shooting for this part without even sort of stopping for breath. It just kind of happened, really. Every time we went out, it was rich and successful. Had found a lot of new places to go and skate. Um, was able to make a lot of pictures on my phone into moving real images on the computer. A lot of the time when you're out on the bikes, you're just snapping stuff like that would be cool, but
Yeah,
it might actually take some weeks to like kind of just look over the stuff of your phone and be like, yeah, like let's form a route around that spot and have like 6 of the guys like come, and maybe some people can get down at that spot, some people can get down at that spot. I could slink away and get away with that spot there, and then we'll all just get the most out of that
that's the
session,
worst
negotiating
frustration.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean,
Having
it's
those things sitting on your phone for months, just being like, it's there. I know where it is. Why have I not been to? And it's because weather or other commitments or rounding
yeah, I
people up.
mean,
Yeah,
I found the most obvious sort of distraction, really was other spots. it was like
but
it was more like
that's
the
when they start
distractions
stacking
were
up and
other
just starting
spots.
annoying you even more. Yeah, I've got ones that have like I moved to a new town about the start of this year, and ever since I've just been clocking all the spot in like the tiny towns, like just working my way out the way. But then it's like getting people out here and then getting people out here that can skate the spots because not everyone can skate certain terrain or whatever. And then you're like, months have passed and these things are just gathering dust in my foot. And yeah, it slowly drives you nuts.
No, I can imagine that. And I think there's I've got like, maybe there's a sense of urgency about, sometimes I have a sense of urgency, like I'm 37 and I feel great. I feel better than really I ever have, but there's also that kind of lingering knowing that it's not like I've got forever left to do this kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
I never imagined that I could get to where I am in life in general, in terms of how I think, how I experience what goes on inside of me, and how I know myself, and where I want how I know myself to be seen and shown and to be demonstrated in just a non kind of verbal way. That stuff's all important personal knowing that's been going on, that's been happening for me. So there is that little sense of urgency that I've kind of found this period of magic in a way, like in terms of when I see something and it strikes me as an idea, it's like there's a real possibility that I can make that happen with basically anything I'm looking at this point. I'm not saying I'm the fucking oracle, like, I tornado fish the king, not that's not what I'm talking about.
I know what you mean. Like, as in, you've developed a skill set or a diversity that you're like. I think it was like Dominic Bruce was talking about it. He like doesn't look for tricks; he looks for spots, and then he
Yeah,
figures out what he can.
absolutely. It's
And then he
interpret
like modifies his skating for that spot. He's like, well, I can't do it on that side on that particular obstacle, but I'm going to go away and learn something that I can then bring back to. And I think that's over the years you've diversified your trick range so much that, yeah, pretty much whatever someone puts in front of you, you're going to be able to do something or make it your own.
Yeah, I think Dom's a very astute young man, and with that particular viewpoint, what I take from that is, how do you interpret your space? Rather than sort of going out in a myopic kind of state of mind where, like, I've just down rails, down ledges, I've got to do some grinds kind of thing. I think it's definitely really freeing to kind of look at whatever space you're in, and especially in these city situations like in London, look at blocks, look at shapes, look at iconic areas, look at places that are destitute and worn down, look at old infrastructure, look at the common furniture, look at the post boxes, the old phone boxes, look at the bollards, look at how they're set up and arranged over there, look at everything as if you're sort of interpreting space, and what is a spark within you, what speaks to you to move in a certain way in that space is just something that is ambiguous, but it's for you, it's defined. It's like I know where and when to move on certain things given what my skill set is. And if I'm like looking at something, it's really, it's exciting. It's as I said, I never thought it would get to this point. I never thought skating would get to this point. I always remember when I was a kid, there were these porter rails at this local station, and they're literally like shin height. And some of the lads were able to get onto this rail back then in 1997 or whatever. And I used to remember looking at the rails going, I'll never do that. And that feeling of I'll never do that, I'll never do that, I'll never do that. I always think of that feeling of I would never do that, and think about the kind of mad shit that we're doing now. And it's a really kind of, yeah, it's a stark kind of illustration as to how far, things have gone, with skating. And, it is about, yeah, it's just about how you interpret that space now. I'm not really looking, I don't know what I'm looking for. I like banks, I like dropping into banks. That's definitely something I like to do. I like my top soles. I like trusting the top sole on an area that isn't even a spot. We spoke about that earlier on. And I like, the other day I figured out I figured out how to do manuals. I'd never
I've been pursuing the whole toe roll thing for years, and I've said to like countless people, whenever someone like tries to belittle that trick or like say, oh, it's pussy, or oh, it's not dangerous, you're like, every time I'm like, see, if I could do those, I would do nothing else. I would stop skating handrails. I would not put myself in harm's way anymore. I would just do toe roll and cess slide variations in and out of every grind I know. I was like, I would never touch another handrail again. So when
yeah,
people say they're
this is
so
a
hard, they are so
heel
fucking
manual.
hard.
I was doing it on the wrong foot. I realized I'd always tried manuals on my left foot because it's my sole foot. Like, and then at the skate park the other day at PlayStation, just before this new lockdown, I tried to do a heel manual on my right foot because I'm right footed with football or whatever. I'm just right footed.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. Like,
light bulb.
Yeah, literally, like you idiot. You were doing it on the wrong foot, you muppet. And then so anyway, I practiced a few and I was like, Eric Burke, I can be Eric Burke. I always wanted to be Eric Burke, from VG5 when he does that long he was my
It's so
first
funny that
favorite skater.
he used to get clowned all the time because he was big and lanky and he wasn't trendy. He never fit into any like the popular molds. Like he was just a big, skinny, awkward looking kid.
Yeah,
And now so many skaters look and skate like Eric Burke. It's it's
yeah,
it's
he's
so interesting how things like that happen. Like all these people that were just way ahead of their time.
he was my first favorite skater. I mean, there were a few things that I really liked about him. One of the things, like, he did the back Nugan up the ledge. So he was it was one of the first going up ledges that I'd seen. I loved how he just used to do really nice, solid mono. He back Nugan's up a white ledge, and I was like, oh my god, he's doing an alley oop royale up a ledge. Like,
Yeah,
how's
yeah, he did a lot of tricks before their time as well, which I think went against him because people were like, just do normal tricks, but he was doing new tricks.
and he was also doing so like he did like like acid rains, like tabernacles and stuff
That
like that.
that's
So
right, I
I
remember,
think,
like the acid royales because I used to do those all the time. Yeah, him and
yeah,
Ezekwe Anderson used to do them, and I used to play whenever you play someone at Blade, I'd do it, and it would just piss everyone off because they're like, I've never tried that, so I'm definitely not doing that down a down rail. That's suicide. Yeah,
yeah, it's a bit of a dick move, but I can't talk because I've my feet go the other way. So I've you know messed with a few people doing the kind of double soles like that. But I think for Eric Burke as well, it was just like, his whole demeanor, like you said, kind of awkward, vulnerable, gangly, kind of like punk dude. Was just a bit softly spoken, but he just looked cool. He looked like kind of the Sonic the Hedgehog highlighted hair, the camo shorts, the fiction hoodie, doing monos off of everything. And when he did grind, when he did royales, they're just proper, always did just nice looking grinds. But he had that kind of tendency to do tricks that may have been part of the freak vernacular, like kind of freak tricks kind of
yeah,
thing, like the tabernacles and stuff. And I think it was those things that may not have, endeared him to some people, but for me it made him, like, his creative sort of unusual tendencies made him like one of my favorite skaters, and yeah, like, and then his appearance in VG8 in the Peld section is like, come on, man, with the that tune, the Incubus tune from the film Spawn.
from Spawn. Familiar
Look at
or
me
something.
now,
Yeah,
look at
yeah,
me
another one.
now,
You mean
you're
yeah, familiar face
that
or something.
one.
Yeah. I know what
Yeah.
you mean. Yeah,
Oh yeah, that's the whole section is like, that's street skating, that's crew shit, that's filming, that's like SD fisheye shit. Everyone looks swag as fuck. Like, it's actually almost a perfect section. Got Mike Choley up in there doing like
he's
kind grinds to stales.
insanely good.
Is
Yeah.
The whole thing is just like, this is so heavy, and so Eric Burke was always in late 90s, early 2000s, was a big inspiration for me, first favorite skater. And yeah, like I learned heel manual. So I'm next section, you're gonna see me like I'll be doing the zero spin heel roll across the manny, and I'll come out the wrong way and I'll look the other way. You won't know what's going on. Nah. I'm gonna do a forwards one over a platform like that big and be like, yeah, I can do it. It's in a line. You've seen it in the section. I can do it. Whereas
You're just looking for like blocks of concrete everywhere now. You're like, I need a pad. I need a pad.
a pad.
Where are the pads?
I'm
Actually, you've
I'm
got
fa-
one. You've got one at London. Oh, what's the skateboarders love it. I, it's next to it's next to that like statue thing that everyone wall rides off, or Ollie Short's famous for wall riding off it.
at London Bridge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's one there because Blondie McCoy has it in his latest Adidas shoe thing where he does a trick on it, and I'm pretty sure it's his ender.
Well, yeah, I think like that set of stairs is a set of stairs I was talking about earlier on that I'll
But just
make
before it,
Kate back in
it's
on.
got the manual pad slash grindable object. I think it's like a statue or something. It's just like a block of
Yeah,
concrete.
yeah, it's a rough block with
Yeah.
some kind of like, you know, structure on it, whatever it is. I actually don't know what it is, but we've always like either yeah. Yeah, it's one of the older things in that area. Actually, it's been there for ages, and you sort of,
Just don't
you get those ancient
pay
ledges
that
that
much
kind of,
attention. Yeah.
no, it's like an ancient ledge that comes in and out of being skated. It's like it will always be there. They'll never cap it because it's probably listed. They can't put metal caps on that thing. But yeah, so I mean, even at 37, old dog and all of that shit, but I'm still at that. Okay, I've kind of gotten to where I want to be. So it's like, can I focus and like learn some shit that I kind of always wanted to do? And the other day I was just like, I was with James and that we were at the skate park, and I made like a big song and dance about the fact that I'd done a deliberate manual.
I
And it
meant
was like,
it
no,
and
you
everything.
you don't get it. Like, I mean, the people do get it, because I think ultimately everyone knows that they're
Are hard
actually
as
really
hell.
quite
Yeah.
difficult. I just didn't think I had the kind of body type. I didn't think I had all of these like excuses, like my feet arches aren't right to do the manuals, and I've got the right skates
Oh,
for it.
that is the
And
excuse I'm using. I'm saying I'm flat-footed, and that's why I can't do them, and I'm sticking to it. It's not me. It's biology. Biology's failed me.
yeah, I've been fucked over by God,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. Poor. It's
God
just
doesn't want me to
the
do
ergonomics
manuals.
don't work, and I can't do anything about it. That's just the way it is.
Cheers, God, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it all comes back.
It
Um,
all comes back.
so more importantly, I've got last two questions. Oh, I've got three
Mhm,
questions. Two of
mhm,
them are easy ones to answer. One of them might be a little bit harder.
mhm.
So, when are you going to settle down, have kids, and get fat like the rest of us?
um, I am settled with somebody. I've got a
So, I
really,
mean,
really
you've been with your missus for years, haven't you?
yeah. I've been with my partner for like 12 years plus. We're very, very close. She's amazing. She's just the best person on the planet. And like, we're about as settled and agreed upon as a pair could be. And
This is a
I
very
think part of
long-winded. This is a very long-winded answer to a very easy question.
um we're not going to be having kids,
Right.
that's for sure. um and getting kind of to the point where I've like let go of myself, if that's what you're asking. I just don't see that as a possibility. I think outside of
I don't
skating.
either. You just seem far too like, yeah, tunnel vision, determined to ever. I don't see that happening either. But I thought I'd throw it out there and see what your response would be.
Outside of skating, it's like, I like having a good command of my body. I practice stuff like, I practice yoga, I stretch my body, I go out and play football like often. I'm an active fella. So I just that's part of like how I move. It's just my body's attuned and conditioned for these sorts of things, and long may that be the case. So I'm really looking to look after myself. I'm not going out like that, as
Yeah,
Cypress Hill would say.
I didn't think you would be. Um, when are you going to film another section to a Justin Timberlake song?
Well, when Luke Thompson decides to kind of chop another part for me,
I
yeah,
can't
that's
believe that's
funny. That's
still
actually
online. I
that's
can't.
still online.
It's still online. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a good one. That, do I count that as one of my official parts? That's the
it's
question.
it's it's a solo street part. It's online. It's a solo street
Yeah,
part. It's a part.
it's one of those ones where when I stumble across it and you just have that chuckle. It's just like, skating is so ridiculous. And just that era where I can remember quite a lot of what was happening at the time. And just it's just stupid, and it's funny and it's silly. And
I just love how badly some things age. Like some things you can watch and go, that's still, as you would say, holds weight. And then there's other
is
things
that
you walk
the
by and you go, fucking hell. I remember I used to like be obsessed with this, and now I'm watching it now, and this is cringe as shit.
yeah, it's just, I think like Luke had a pretty funny handle on my sort of stressings out, basically.
Yeah.
So definitely I've had managing stress and getting very intense at the skate spot, getting beaten up, getting upset, fuck, all of this kind of shit. um so if I remember rightly, there's some funny shit like that in the section, and I think it even starts off with some like me saying like, oh yeah, like sometimes you just got to be a cunt, didn't you, something like, I can't remember,
I can't even remember.
because I think he interviewed me at one point for something to do with his college. some like, I can't, I've been in front of the camera a lot, often not doing like stuff like this, interviews. It's more like skating, but I think that was one of the early interviews for like a college thing. And then he used,
Little did
it
you
was
know
something
you're
about,
preparing him for a life in porn.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, obviously Luke's pathway, in terms of post-production went its route,
Yeah,
and who knew it would have gone that way for him at that point. It was all
I'm sure.
very
I'm sure there's worse things to be involved in. Yeah,
no, I mean, power to him. I mean, I know Lukey's had a big part of his life formed from everything that come out of there, from relationships to job opportunities. It just shows, even every industry is actually that you sort of don't know about, has its really productive, rich, life-changing kind of ends to it, no pun intended. But yeah, yeah, the next section to JT, who knows? I don't know if I'm going to be putting out any ones that are particularly fun.
I mean, you could have just laughed that off and told me to fuck off, but yeah.
No, it's a funny section. It's a good one. I remember that one. I know what
Like,
you're talking about.
right. I've always wanted to know. You've put out a lot of VODs over the years.
Mhm.
What's the best you've done financially out of a VOD? What's the most money you've made out of a section?
Devotion, unequivocally. Yeah.
What
I
are we
think
talking?
I think it's something like, it was something like 200 downloads or something. I would have to, my memory
Oh yeah, I'm
is,
not asking specifics. I mean ballpark.
yeah, it's like 200 or so kind of thing. Um, the revenue from that split was about like a grand each, something like that. Right. And we went 50-50 in terms of, the revenue made from that project.
Yeah,
Uh, I
that's
mean, it's not really,
for a single
this is not,
section. That's all right. Yeah, like
this
Aunt
isn't,
Medina was talking about um, Candy and basically saying they came away with 2 grand each. I mean, that's for like a full length video. So
yeah, these aren't like, life-changing amounts of
yeah,
money.
definitely.
Ultimately, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3 camcorders down here on my floor here. One of them is in prime working order. The other one's about 20 years old. And the other one is my first Panasonic that got the absolute shit beaten out of it, making Bank Volume 1 and some of the other projects at the beginning, homage to the dream. On the bank site was the HPX 250, but the image stabilization and other internal kind of deft elements of the camera are now not in working order. So essentially, any revenue from like this one, most of that is going to go towards fixing that camera. So
Equipment,
then
yeah.
I'm going to have essentially a fleet of panos like ready to go, but that's going to be like £700 job for that camera to get it fixed. So these aren't like, amounts of money that are really like significant. It's essentially about keeping sort of the like operation running
Yeah.
basically, and camera costs are at the top of that. The way that we use fisheye cameras, and I've had to rein it in a lot with my current camera, which is an HPX 170. I'm not really filming fisheye as much as I was with the previous one, for instance, because I know that the camera got beaten the shit out of. I was putting the lens and the camera in real danger,
Well,
a
that and
lot.
don't you? You've still got the Bayo Sensory now, don't you? So you're going to want to keep that, and you don't want that getting the shit kicked out of it.
Dude, my lens that I'm using right now is the one specially made for the camera, and like, there isn't getting another one.
Yeah.
There isn't another one. I really have to protect that at all costs, and it's just one of those things where it's like it changed the way that like I want to film a little bit, I suppose. Maybe go longer a lot more and just protect the camera, and get more from the emotions of my subject. So shooting long, obviously you're able to do that using your zoom
Yeah, zoom
tool
in
and
the face and stuff like that. Yeah.
obviously stuff like that. But you know yeah, revenue is sort of like, for formal projects, I think there's a point to having a price point to those projects. I think yes, there's a market for that. Obviously, if there is like a machine that needs a bit of oiling or that needs keeping going a little bit. Some people might say travel expenses, some people might say their clothing lines for their platform, stuff like that. For me, really, I would like to do a little bit more, maybe stuff with like, some clothes and shit like that, soft goods or whatever. But really, it's just about fixing up these goddamn cameras and just keeping the show going in terms of being able to just be out and produce and have different avenues for producing stuff. And again, it's like I'm going to be putting out another few over the next few weeks that are just going to be labors of love for people to enjoy, where there's no paywall in front of that. And I think for certain projects like Scott, I mean, I've got to just say, for this project, it's like, homeboy worked his fucking ass off, for 2.5 months or whatever, maybe a month and a half, maybe 6 to 8 weeks, just straight up, editing this thing, discussing, synthesizing ideas, things that we'd spoken about, references to like music, references to things that we enjoy about other sorts of pieces of work, skating wise or else. um and really just poured his mind and everything that he had like into this project, and really gifted me that. It's a personal thing. He's like gifted me that. So having a little bit of revenue to like kind of offer him and respect the amount of like work and creativity, and it's a personal thing. Like, I went over to spend some time with Scott in Norwich and actually go and skate with him and stay with him, so we could kind of connect on those frequencies, so you'd know a little bit more about what he was doing with this footage. It wasn't just like, all right, he's good at editing, let me send him the footage. It was like, let's have a think about how this can go, and let's talk, and and hopefully it can get you just a little token, really, because again, he's working, I'm working, we're working guys. It's not fucking life-changing money. It's like he gifted me with that, and so I think it would only be commensurate for me to do the same with him with a little bit of cash. So
Definitely.
it's good for me to be able to do that.
You hinted at it. So last thing, I know what you're like. I know even before one project's finished, you've already got your eye on the next one, because that's just yeah, dedicated. Can you give us any hints about what's coming next?
Well, we've closed out this year. I think 2021 should be interpreted with some degree of optimism. I think that we can probably look forward to closing the curtain on the sort of Corona period, the Corona era. I'm hoping that this coming year will provide that hope for everybody. And so with that will come a little bit of that burden off the shoulders, I think. Like just stuff like seeing my partner. I've seen my partner about 10 times this year. Like, it's been fucked, beyond description. Like the kind of reverberations this whole era has meant, and how life has changed. It's changed a great deal for me, and so I think, like, looking forward to some of that burden just releasing a little bit. I think things with my family, things with my relationships, things work wise, just trying to be as good as I possibly can in all of the areas where I have responsibility. And that will allow me to be free and to be as creative and as focused as I can be with all things skating. So that's going to come with filming, hopefully traveling. And that's the big thing. It's traveling. Like, I would have by this point been blessed enough to go away like fucking 10 times, like do like 10 skate tours in a year. I haven't been anywhere this year. It's been the first year in many that I'd not been anywhere other than the Netherlands. So I'm certainly looking to get to Japan. I think as soon as it's like flying's a thing, it's Japan. I've got a mind of who would want to come on that trip and be part of that. So I think a big kind of tour location oriented project under bank is definitely for 2021, Corona depending. And other than that, I want to work with a couple of people who are dear to my heart, one of them being Neil. And I think it's high time that he pulls his extraordinary drive and mind and vision of skating in London and his like areas of interest into a skate park. And we've spoken about that like a little bit. Again, it's a bit more of like a kind of, it's a gift thing. It's like, look, dude, you know, no one's going to put a gun to your head. It's just like before the time's gone, you know, as I was speaking about that urgency, there's a degree of urgency that I work with as a proviso for all of this stuff right now. And I want to light the fire under some of you know, my peers' backsides, because I know that they're there with me like that, you know. So
Yeah, definitely.
just expect all kinds of shit pretty much, you know. I'll be busy in the streets.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, like if it's been like any other year in the past decade, I'm sure you'll have a ton of stuff out in 2021. So yeah, can't wait to see it.
Thanks, man.
I've had you on here for like 3 hours now. I think that's enough interrogation for one
Oh
night.
shit, dude. Yeah, I had that jet fuel coffee, so you
I
know, I
was
was
I was like, when you told me you were having a coffee before this, I was like, he's having a coffee at 8 o'clock at night. That is brave.
well, if we're getting into it, we're getting into it.
This is
So,
true.
you know,
And we definitely get into it. So yeah.
I really enjoyed it, man. Thanks a lot. Yeah,
Me too.
sweet dude.
Yeah, have a good one and hopefully bump into you sooner rather than later in person.
Yeah, dude. I hope so. Just take it easy, look after, and yeah, just all the best, dude. Happy New Year.
You too. Speak soon.
Peace, Dave.